All right. I believe I hit the button, so we should be live. What is going on, everybody? This is Randall19, the man with the million, back again with another episode of the Xbox 2 podcast here on a Friday. I think that's 2 weeks in a row. We're on a streak. Let's see how long we can keep this going. And with me, as always, the one, the only, Jez Corden of Windows Central. What's going on, buddy? All right.
Hey pal. It's been a nice, semi-relaxing week. I was supposed to have a vacation this week, but then leaks kept happening, so I ended up not having too much of a vacation. But yeah, I played a lot of Outriders though.
Yeah, so did I. And I'm kind of pissed.
How's your week?
We'll talk about that.
Well,
yeah, I'm a little upset with what's going on with what they decided to do, but we'll definitely delve into that. So, I want to welcome everybody to the show. We have a whole bunch of people here already waiting. We got Punka Dish, we got Sleepy Goblin 2D, Marco Cooper, Flip Mad Max, Zener White, Gunstar, Lethal Papa, Pong Soul, Blue Moon FC, Tony Art, Calantis. Thank you guys. A whole bunch of you all already here. Friday episode of the Xbox 2, and there always is something. When we do the show every single week, in fact, when me and Jez first started talking about doing a podcast, there was a little bit of concern that there wouldn't necessarily be stuff to talk about all the time. Right, Jez?
Oh, sorry, man. My headset was messing up a bit there. What did you say?
I was just saying, basically, when we first started talking about this podcast back in the Skype days, when we talked about doing the show, we were both concerned that there wouldn't necessarily be enough content every single week to do a show simply, for the two of us, right? Because a lot of other podcasts have many, many different people, right? To basically kind of lengthen the topic discussion. When you get like 6 people on a show and each one has their own take, we were concerned that for just 2 people, it wasn't going to be a lot of news to discuss every single week and stuff like that. But man, is it really kind of basically we were proven wrong because, literally last week, it was funny. Thursday last week, Jess says to me, I don't know what we're going to talk about in the show. And I'm like, we'll figure something out. We always do. And then Friday, it's like MLB The Show 21, day 1 on Game Pass. And everybody's like, oh, shiz, right? And then this week, it's like, man, what's going on? What are we going to talk about in the show? And then it's like, Kojima working with Xbox. PlayStation canceling Days Gone 2 and The Last of Us remake, all like in the day before we go live. And it's like, hey, there's some topics that we can actually talk about and have a good discussion about. So there's always something interesting leading up to E3 and everything. So
yeah, it's starting to ramp up now, isn't it? A bit.
It is. We're getting close. We're like 2 months, and Xbox still has a bunch of events leading up here. So welcome everybody. If you, as we, chit chat a little bit here, make sure you guys hit the like button and share this out on social media, especially Twitter, to get more people into the show because sometimes YouTube does a terrible job. We have a lot here to talk about. The Kojima rumors. Does everything on Phil's shelf actually mean something and what they could be? Xbox return to E3 and what can we expect? There's rumors that even bigger games are coming to Game Pass in the future. We'll be discussing that Jason Schreier article about PlayStation and their studios and what's going on there and a whole bunch of other stuff. So hit that like button. It's going to be a great show. But I got to give a shout out to the Scarecrow 121. He says, shout out to the community watching Rand and Jez for another awesome week of news. Yes, right. You guys make the show what it is. Not me and Jez. We're just 2 dummies, a tomato and an avocado, sitting here talking. You guys make the show what it is. The great community that we've built over what has it been 4 years, Jez? I think I told you it's actually we didn't mention it on the show, but like 2 weeks ago was our 4-year anniversary. We've been doing the podcast for 4 years.
Man, that's wild, man. We should try and do something special for the 5-year maybe.
Yeah.
Milestone, get Phil on or something.
That'd be cool. We definitely. I should DM Phil and ask him if he wants to be on the show. That'd be amazing if we could get Mr. Spencer on here to talk about what Xbox is doing. Shout out to Michael, becoming the newest member of the channel. Thank you for supporting the show and enjoy your emotes. Professor KS says, glad you guys are here on Friday. Can't wait to hear your take on today's Jason Schreier article. My man Punkadish says, gotta head into work. Have a great show, Rand and Jez. We'll check out the replay. So like, I know, we do the live show, and it's great if you can actually be here live in the chat and all that stuff. But if you can't, don't feel discouraged. You can always watch it later on YouTube, and we do put the show up on Spotify and Google Play and iTunes for anybody that would much rather just download it to their phones and just, if you're driving places. I know my buddy Lord Cognito from Iron Lords, who just had Colin Moriarty on their podcast this past week, which was an amazing episode. People should go check that out. He always listens to us, Jez, in his car as he's doing errands. He has us blaring when he's driving his ride, which is pretty interesting. So, you know what? Let us know. Well, now, see, everybody's here listening to this live. I thought it'd be interesting to say, hey, how do you listen to the Xbox too? But everybody here is probably listening to it on their phone or their PC when it's live. But we do offer, the podcast services for those that don't want to listen on YouTube. So we just appreciate everybody that turns out and supports us. And, whether it's just a listen or whether you're just commentating or whether you want to go, an extra support with the Super Chat or membership, it's all greatly appreciated from us. Sin Vendetta says, hey, Rand and Jez, here's hoping you are both doing well in your workout and weight loss journeys. Here's to an incredible show. Yeah, how's the weight loss going, Jez? Pretty good still?
Yeah, man. I've lost 30 pounds now in 5 weeks.
Nice.
Which is pretty good.
So what are you eating? What's the secret to your success?
I'm just calorie counting. I'm eating whatever I want, up to 1,000 calories a day, and I just count. I just measure things. If it's rice or pasta, I measure it out. Piece of bread, it says on the packet how much is in a slice of bread. Measuring it out, measuring all the butter, measuring all the drinks, the milk, everything. Just measuring everything, and then restricting it to 1,000 a day. And then the way it just falls off, I've done it before this way. But, long way to go, I think, until I'm, attractive enough to start my OnlyFans. But,
attractive enough.
Did you see what Cliffy B tweeted today?
Oh, no, what did he tweet?
Well, VG247 wrote an article that was like, oh, Cliffy B wants to return to games. And then Cliffy B replied to it, and he's like, that's not what I said. I just said I'm starting something new. It could be an OnlyFans for all you know. Or some paraphrasing. And then OnlyFans replied, let us know if you need help setting up your account.
Amazing.
I thought that was
That's pretty interesting. Does we really need Cliffy B to come back? I actually really like Lawbreakers when I actually played it, but
I never actually played it, but I did like Cliffy B's Gears games, so
yeah.
I don't know. Give that man a budget. Let him have another go at it. But it sounds like he might be doing something else completely.
Sounds like it. Sin Vendetta says he subscribes to YouTube Premium, which allows me to listen to the show live in the background while I'm working cleaning pools. I actually subscribe to YouTube Premium as well. I watch a lot of creators, whether it's, Dealer Gaming or Cold Eastwood or ILP or any of the, Mr. Boomstick shows. There's a lot of fantastic Xbox content creators. And yes, I even do check out quite a few PlayStation content creators. I like listening to Press Start Podcast. I'll check out like Mystic Ryan's channel. I subscribe to YouTube Premium because I don't want to see ads. Ads are important because that's how content creators get paid. And I know some people hate the ads. I know some people will ad block it. But I pay, I think, $10 a month or $12 a month for premium because I don't want to see the ads. And mostly because I want the people I watch to get compensated for what they're doing. Like, I'm a content creator. There are ads in my videos. It would be hypocritical of me to basically ad block YouTube. So I pay for YouTube Premium, and it's totally worth it to me. And people, if you are subscribed to YouTube Premium, the creators actually get a larger cut than if you just actually watch the ads. But, each person does a little bit differently. But, yeah, I also use YouTube Premium. as well.
I used YouTube Premium for a month, and I was like, I'll just subscribe because they give you a free month, don't they? And I was like,
Yeah.
I'll just subscribe and see how it is, and then like unsubscribe straight away. And then after the month ticked over, I was like, oh my god, ads. Ugh.
Mm-hmm.
So then I resubscribed straight away.
Yeah, the
Well.
ads. But I just like knowing that like I'm supporting the people that I care about and watch on YouTube. So $10 a month is great. I know when people complain about ads, it's like I don't see them. I don't think so. Either way, yeah. So man, we have a lot here to talk about, Jez. A lot of different topics. But first, I'm sure this segment will be short. What we've been playing because it's probably the same exact stuff we talked about last week. Although I'm going to have a little rant here about Outriders. I actually was in a party chat. See, me and Jez, we talk all the time. We're in DMs all the time. We talk to each other quite frequently. But we only actually speak to each other normally during the podcast because when he's on Xbox, I'm usually not around. I don't get on Xbox till later. But actually, we actually spoke on the Xbox. I met your brother, your younger brother, this past week because I was in a party with you, and you and him were trying to play Outriders, and he was not having a good time.
No, so I've tried to play Outriders with a few people now. On Twitter and my brother and stuff like that, and it just doesn't want to happen. I've tried it. I've tried playing with Miles, who's on Mountain Time in the US, and it was just crashing and disconnecting, and I was just like, oh man, I guess this means Miles is too far away. So then I tried playing with people on the East Coast, and it was like, oh, crashing, disconnecting, and I was like, well, I guess this means they're too far away. And I tried playing my brother, who's literally in the same house, and who's still crashing and disconnecting. So there is something horribly broken with the networking code on that game, like horrifically broken.
You okay, Jez?
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Well, you kind of cut out there after you said it was horrifically broken.
Ah, man, I'm having some like USB issues or something. But yeah, it's just broken, and I just like want it fixed. So rather than play with people in co-op, I've been playing the game completely solo, just because I can't stand all the disconnects. What did you want to rant about with it?
So I've been playing with Cold Eastwood and Fonzarelli and Lord Addict and Lord Cognito, playing through the game, enjoying it, right? Like I'm level 23. I think I'm world tier 10. I'm having a blast playing as the Trickster. I've been using my twisted rounds and combining them with the different abilities to really stack extra damage because some of the enemies can be bullet sponges, like straight up bullet sponges, right? Especially the captains. So while I'm enjoying the game, this is a game that has a ton of issues, right? Server problems. I don't know how many times we had to like start a new lobby because people were lagging or people couldn't, connect. But man, I don't know about anybody else here in chat is playing Outriders, but the crashes to the dashboard, I've never played a game that has crashed more to the dashboard in my entire life. This is going back to the 360, right? Obviously, you can't really talk about the Genesis or the NES or stuff like that. They didn't have dashboards, so to speak. Then this game. This game has crashed to the dashboard on myself at least 20 times. We'd be fighting bosses, and my teammates would crash to the dashboard. Last night, when I was trying to be like, okay, we're doing something, I'm going to return to the lobby, every time you would hit return to the lobby, it would crash to the dashboard. Like, you have all these problems with the game.
That's like a bug. If you try to launch the game from fast resume, it crashes. Like yeah. I don't think I've played a game that crashed the dashboard.
But I wasn't using quick resume on this game.
Even if it was just in suspended mode, or if you didn't log out of the game and shut it down all the way, then when you log back in, it crashes to the dashboard.
No, it's just we were playing for like an hour. I was playing for an hour last night, and Cole couldn't join the game, so I was like, let me go back to the lobby, right? I click return to lobby, it crashes to the dashboard, right? So it has all these problems that needs to be fixed. And what do the developers decide to do first? Nerf the classes. Like, what are you doing? The game's been out a week.
Well, man, this is showing my growing knowledge of game development, right?
Mm-hmm.
But nerfing a class is a lot easier than fixing
I understand that nerfing classes is a lot easier than that. My point
handled by a different team too.
Sure. My point is that it's the game's been out a week. How can you realistically have information about high level content and high level players doing stuff when like 95% of the people playing haven't reached that stuff, or to determine whether or not all the different ammo rounds are, overpowered? My point is, it's a bad look. The game has been plagued by issues since the beginning. Like, crossplay doesn't work, crashes to the dashboard, right? It has all these issues, and the first thing you fix is to make sure you nerf a lot of the abilities for the pyromancer, for the trickster, for the technomancer, right? It just, I don't know, it just doesn't come across as a good look whatsoever, right? But that's just me. I don't know. Like, it's a PvE game. This isn't even a PvP game. I'd understand a little bit more if there was a PvP component where people were, fighting against each other. But this is literally just against regular enemies. What's the rush to?
I'll explain that too. If you,
I understand. Well, like, they don't want people to blow through the content. I get it.
No. It's not that. It's power creep, right? So if you say, for example, you've got a bunch of abilities that are weaker than others, you can buff those abilities to be stronger and bring them in line with the other abilities. But then, like, if there's another imbalance and you just keep buffing everything, then you start having power creep, and then you have to buff the enemies. It makes more sense to just nerf a few things than to buff everything else constantly up to the level of the thing that was not powerful enough. Because players will always find the optimal or most powerful builds and stuff. I literally earlier tweeted, I'm not looking forward to the Blighted Rounds nerf because I've been using Blighted Rounds on my Technomancer. But I didn't realize that the nerf had already gone in, so I didn't even feel the nerf really. So it's I don't think it was so bad. I'm still literally tearing through enemies with this stuff. So
still,
but I don't know what world tier are you on?
I'm on World Tier 10 right now.
Right.
I think we're getting close.
Almost on World Tier 10.
Yeah, we're getting close to finishing the game. But I mean, outside of the issues, I do think the game's fun. I'm not sure if it's a game for everybody. But are you surprised by how popular this game has been on Xbox? Because Benji Sales tweeted out some of this info yesterday. I checked it on the Xbox, the most played games section, as well as the website. Right now, or at least yesterday, Outriders was the third most played game on Xbox. Only behind Modern Warfare, only behind Fortnite. And if you actually delve into top paid, it's number one in top paid too. Now, I don't know if that means everybody downloading it counts as a sale. I don't really think it does, but
I don't think it does. No.
But if you take Xbox's website and Xbox's store at face value, they're correct. Outriders is performing like a free-to-play title. It's up there among the juggernauts on the Xbox. Grand Theft Autos, the Apex Legends, the Fortnites, the Call of Duties. And despite being given away for quote-unquote free with Xbox Game Pass, it's the best-selling game, or at least the top-paid game on the service. What do you make of this, Jez?
Well, Microsoft has hinted at this in a previous interview, where they believe that Xbox Game Pass drives retail sales of games. And we can see this evidenced last summer when Flight Simulator, Age of Empires, Sea of Thieves all dominated Steam on Steam's sales chart, despite the fact it was optionally there for $1 or $5 through the Game Pass for PC beta. So, there is evidence to suggest that when you put a game in Game Pass, you're almost applying a free-to-play style word-of-mouth marketing towards the game. So by giving more people access to a game, like Genshin Impact or whatever, the free game, there's like this word of mouth effect if the game's actually good. Now, Game Pass sort of allows for that to happen for a retail quality AAA game. But you also get the retail sales too. And on top of that, you also get the microtransactions. And this game's going to have microtransactions eventually, obviously. Like, probably cosmetics or whatever, but it will have them eventually. So you're getting, like, the best of both worlds almost. You get the free word-of-mouth marketing and the hype from Twitch, which seems to drive sales of the game even on other platforms like Steam. Microsoft doesn't get... Well, obviously, Microsoft gets a cut of that. But, Microsoft has to pay a cut to Steam, 30% or whatever it is, when a game's sold through Steam. And the virality of Sea of Thieves, because of Game Pass, helped make Steam money. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the virality of Outriders on Xbox is helping drive sales on PlayStation as well, which is hilarious to think about. It's certainly true of Steam, I believe, and Microsoft has certainly inferred that Sea of Thieves sold better on Steam because of Game Pass, not in spite of it. So if we can believe that, then we can believe it's selling better on PlayStation because of Game Pass too, which is wild. And it sort of flies in contradiction to the comparison to Spotify or Netflix, right? Because when it came to Spotify, CD sales plummeted to almost nothing. Like vinyl sales outstrip CD sales now. And similarly with Netflix, people aren't buying DVDs as much. DVDs are worth nothing. You can't resell a DVD. But for some reason, it doesn't seem to be applying to games. It's weird. Like, why is that?
I don't know.
And I guess part of it might be because Microsoft has been so upfront with when games are going to leave the service. And people are like, well, I really enjoy this, and I get a discount through Game Pass. Maybe I'm just going to buy it anyway. Like, it's weird. I don't know. And maybe people just want to show support for the games they like. I don't know. Like, I know, for example, I loved Monster Hunter World so much that I went out and bought a bunch of cosmetic DLC for it. Just because I was like, man, I love this game. I want to buy more stuff for it. And there's no DLC on Spotify, and there's no DLC on Netflix. It does seem to be like Microsoft might have stumbled upon the perfect business model. The ultimate business model. But the business model. But I don't know. It's hard to say for sure without hard data and sales intentions and stuff like that. Like, I would love to know how many people bought the game who also subscribe to Game Pass. How many people are like, yeah, I got Game Pass and I'm playing this game for free, but I'm going to buy it as well anyway. Like, how many people?
That is interesting.
Maybe people care, like, the sense of ownership for games is different than movies and music for some reason. I don't know.
Well, so this is going to kind of dovetail in another discussion about other rumors about Game Pass and Microsoft targeting bigger games for the future, right? Because I would imagine, and we kind of talked about this before, but I'm gonna get to a couple super chats before I continue. Achievement says I use YouTube Premium before YouTube TV is absurdly expensive. Sappho says the best podcast on YouTube. Thanks. Well, thank you for being here. And Relish GT says turn off crossplay for a better connection. And Respunk has become the newest member. Thank you for joining the channel. But we talked about this before when Outriders was announced for Game Pass on day one, that this could be that like a test to not only see if getting these type of experiences day one on Game Pass is worth the money Microsoft put out. And if the analytics and data were good, then Microsoft could be like, listen, we're willing to give you a bunch of money. Look what putting Outriders on Game Pass did for that game. Like, hypothetically, if we can roll back the clock a couple weeks ago and Outriders was just going to be available everywhere for $60 and not on Game Pass. Would anybody have said here that it would be the third most played game on Xbox Live, and that potentially, judging however Microsoft has the top paid section, the number one most paid or top paid game on the service? I think none of us would have said that. We probably all would have been like, the demo didn't really sell me. I'm not really sure if I'm going to spend $60. I'm sure it would have hit the top 50 somewhere in there, but nobody would have been like top 3 for sure. But now, with how many users Xbox has, probably around 22 to 23 million. They announced 18 in December, so I'm just saying their velocity is probably 1 million a month, maybe a little bit higher with these two releases. Now Xbox has data that they can share to other bigger publishers and being like, listen, it's you put your game on our service and it's going to act like a free-to-play title. Right? You kind of mentioned this to me before we started talking about you have these people that have Game Pass and it's a large group, and then anything goes in there they can just try out, basically for free. And you look at how Outriders is performing, it's up there with the free-to-play titles. So maybe if you have this huge game that has a bunch of marketing behind it, it'll act like it. So I'm wondering if Microsoft is like, we got the data we needed. It's worth it for the amount of money we're paying. People are subscribing. And most importantly, it's worth it for the developers and publishers to put their games in the service. Like, if you would have said 2 weeks ago,
and they get to double dip.
And yeah, if you would have said a year ago,
driving retail too.
Think about it. If you would have said a year ago that Outriders would have been more successful than Avengers, people would have laughed at you. Avengers has like the biggest like multimedia IP attached to it, and nobody cares about that game. And here's Outriders, a brand new IP, and it is just blowing up to the point that people can't even really play because of the server problems. So now you start to think, okay, what else could Microsoft potentially get, right? If you have the data and you're willing to share it with your friends, and shout out to your leak the other day about Xbox's GameStack Live, where Microsoft does have a session about Game Pass. We've seen some rumors recently. I've heard them, and we've kind of teased some of the stuff on the show that MLB The Show and Outriders aren't going to be the last big AAA games hitting the service. But there are some rumors out there, from Special Ed over at Xbox Era, basically saying that there's a big AAA FPS that might hit Game Pass at the end of the year. He didn't mention or say which one it was, but there's only so many FPSs coming out this, in the holiday. You got Call of Duty, you got Battlefield, you got Back 4 Blood, you got maybe Rainbow Six Parasite or whatever they want to call it, right? What if somehow Microsoft just went to EA, and EA already sees all the data because they're part of Game Pass on the Ultimate side, and Microsoft just cut a check and is like, listen, we want Battlefield 6 on Game Pass day one. We don't care what it costs. We want Madden Game Pass day one. We want FIFA Game Pass day one. I think those deals are actually very likely at this point in time. Where if you would have asked me 3 months ago, I would have been like, nah, not going to happen. But with what Outriders is doing, and with Microsoft continuing this avenue approach of getting these big titles to basically show people the differences between PlayStation and Xbox, where if you want a game for cheap and you want to play a lot of these big titles, you can play them virtually free here on our platform. Sure, you can play on PlayStation, but it's going to cost you $60 for Outriders, $70 for MLB The Show, potentially $60 or $70 for Madden or FIFA or Battlefield or Elden Ring or whatever, Resident Evil 8. But if you come with Xbox, it's going to be included in the service. I think this could all happen, Jez. Are we reaching for the stars here, or is there something to this?
Reach for the stars. No, I agree. I think when you're speaking to a third party and you're like, well, look at this. We got Sea of Thieves and we got Flight Simulator and we got Age of Empires. That's all their games. So it's kind of like, yeah, well, your games are going to be popular in Game Pass because people expect them to be there. So for Outriders, which is a third-party game, to be behaving in the market like a free-to-play game, yet still dominating charts at retail, that kind of really does paint a really rosy picture for a third party. Now, and like you say, it's a new IP nobody's ever heard of, ever. No one's ever heard of Outriders. Like, it's you just never heard of it. But now it's bigger than Avengers, which had, Disney and Iron Man and all those superheroes we like are in it. What are they called? Spider Bro and all that stuff.
Spider Bro. Spider Bro.
Spider Bro. So all those Spider Man or whatever. So all those Marvel characters that are like make up the biggest multimedia franchise this side of Pokemon, that wasn't enough to get people interested in Avengers. And you can argue that maybe gamers are a bit more discerning, and like as soon as a game's notified as bad, the fact that it's bad spreads like wildfire and people just abandon it. But at the same time, Outriders has had a lot of problems of its own. Like co-op just straight up doesn't work, and there's all these other problems with the game, and it's sort of awkward in some ways and a bit clunky in its layouts with all the different segments and the loading screens or whatever. Like it's a flawed game, but there's something about it that's really addictive. Like the combat is really quite good and spectacular in some ways. Like some of the moves you could pull off are hilarious. Like the Pyromancer, the Pyromancer spell, which makes people fly up in the air and explode, is absolutely hilarious, and it has like an amazing sound effect. There's something really satisfying about the game. But either way, if this game was just sent out to reviewers and they were like, meh, 7 out of 10, meh, 6 out of 10, it probably would have fizzled. I'm not saying it probably definitely would have fizzled out, but I don't feel like it would have hit the same amount of interest that it's hit, because when it's in Game Pass, it's kind of like, well, sure, I'll try it. And then you can sort of discover the game for yourself. You're not going in there with the framing, the narrative that's been provided by the press, which are often overly negative. And you can potentially just enjoy the game for what it is. And at that point, it's kind of like, well, I'm kind of hooked on this and I'm going to buy it. And then maybe your friend who doesn't have Game Pass and doesn't want a subscription service for whatever reason, they're like, well, I want to play my friend, so I'm going to buy it. And then you've got this sort of viral effect, which for whatever reason, movies and TV just can't emulate. Maybe it's because there's no multiplayer on Spotify. There's no FOMO. There's no sense of I'm missing out. It's like you don't sit there with your friend listening to the new, I don't know, Spice Girls album, do you? It's just a personal thing. So like I think like all the comparisons to Netflix and Spotify need to die. They're really out of date because the gaming industry is completely different. And there's this upsell and this DLC and there's FOMO and wanting to play with your friends, and there's Twitch streamers who have free access to the game and they can just stream the game. And then there's all those millions of people watching on Twitch who don't have an Xbox who are just like, well, I'm going to buy it on Steam and PlayStation then. And it drives this sort of free-to-play like halo over the game. And here we are, talking about it like it's a tentpole release of the quarter, which, frankly, I don't think we'd be doing if it wasn't on Game Pass. If it wasn't on Game Pass, we wouldn't be talking about Outriders now.
That is true.
We would be.
Yeah, I would have played it for sure, but I don't think it would have this discussion going on around about it. But I do think Microsoft will continue to be aggressive. I agree with you. I agree with Paris because I've been listening to Gamertag Radio and Kind of Funny, the Xcast, that, Battlefield 6. I think Battlefield 6 is, I'm not going to say a shoo-in because nothing is ever really confirmed or whatever, but I think I would not be surprised if you see Microsoft pursue Madden and FIFA for day one and drop a pretty some amount of money and then hit Battlefield 6, potentially even like Back 4 Blood, some of the bigger titles, just to like more or less twist the knife into Sony, right? Because like you have a service that Microsoft wants to get off their feet, and we're gonna talk about this later. But Sony, according to David Jaffe, is also planning a competitor. So I think Microsoft really wants to have that separation, right? Where by the time Sony gets their act together and has a competitor to Game Pass, that Game Pass is already 30 million beyond, 35 million, 40 million, and it doesn't really matter what PlayStation is doing at that point. But switching gears, Jez, switching gears.
Yes.
I want to ask you about your tweet.
Tweet.
Your tweet.
What tweet?
Now, I guess I'm going to read some super chats here, but think of what you're going to say about your tweet, the one that you tease, because I know you love to tease, right? Fear Storage says, listen to you on my phone, mostly using a podcast app. Lucky to catch you guys today live. Keep up the good work. Roker says, how long before Microsoft charges pubs and devs to get on Game Pass? I doubt that will ever happen. Psychonauts says Battlefield 6. MDHX says, does Jez think we'll see Resident Evil 8 on Game Pass day one? What do you think, Jez? Do you think there's a possibility Resident Evil 8 hits day one on Game Pass?
I think it's definitely possible. I have no information about that myself whatsoever. But given how aggressive they've been with Outriders, and given the fact that Resident Evil has this dumb multiplayer that nobody really wants, that Capcom really want to push, a good way to get people in and try it out is to stick it in Game Pass. But, even Game Pass can't perform miracles, But I think it would be, I'm sure Capcom's looking at what's happening to Outriders and thinking, oh, we can get some of that for Resident
Plus we get a
RE-verse,
big check from Microsoft as well to kind of offset the development costs when they're already getting paid from Sony for marketing. It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. After MLB The Show, nothing's going to surprise me. If Resident Evil 8 comes, I won't be surprised. If Battlefield 6 comes, I won't be surprised. I will be surprised if they don't do anything more. Like, if MLB The Show was the last one, that would shock me. Because I'm hearing quite different stuff when it comes to what Microsoft is pursuing at Game Pass. So I would be shocked if they don't pursue bigger games. I think we will definitely see it. So in a couple weeks here, if you have a tweet and Game Pass is like, we haven't teased something in a bit, and it's just like a zombie, walking towards screen, you'll know what game they're talking about. So I guess it's certainly possible. And then we have Sudden Energy says, would a Steam launcher appear on Xbox eventually? We've talked about this before, but I don't think you expect the Steam launcher to appear on Xbox, right, Jez?
I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. Like, there are things that fundamentally wouldn't work with Xbox with regards to Win32 games. The reason why you have to buy a PC is because it's got all the Win32 stuff on it. The reason why a console can do what it does with less power than a PC is because it doesn't have all those legacy stuff in it, like, to put it extremely simplistically. So, no, you're not going to see the Steam launcher on Xbox, but I think, there's a potentiality, again, that word I made up, that Steam... You could get Steam Link for Xbox, maybe stream Steam games to your Xbox, but native Win32 games on Xbox, that's not going to happen.
What about the flip? What about Game Pass on Steam?
That's an interesting idea.
What about the heavily curated version of Game Pass? And maybe we'll talk about this in a little bit when we talk about what Jeff Grubb has to say about Phil's shelf and stuff, because he made more comments today about it. But what if you could basically have a heavily curated first-party Game Pass offering for Steam as well as for Switch? I wonder if that would work, and I wonder if those companies would be interested. Interesting.
I don't think you need to do that if you land Discord. If Microsoft buys Discord, they have a vehicle for pushing Xbox Game Pass on PC without Steam's help. I mean, there's a lot of things that needs to change when it comes to Windows delivery system to make it a more Steam-like experience. Like, right now, the Windows Store is still bad, super bad, and I don't know if it's too deeply ingrained for Microsoft to even fix. But Microsoft knows it's bad, and they know that it's the fact that it's not Steam-like is keeping people off the service. So I don't know. It's just, but it's like you say, after MLB The Show, it feels like anything's possible, right?
Yeah, Dark Siea says, "Hi guys, have a nice show and hit the like button." Yes, if you guys are enjoying the show and you're listening and you hadn't hit that like button, just click it. It's super free, really easy, and it helps out the show and the channel. My man, Gaming Forte, he says, "Sup gentlemen, Outriders might be the catalyst Xbox needed in Game Pass to get wider interest from bigger publishers in the service, hopefully for Battlefield 6. Eddie P says, "Does Game Pass reduce the impact of bad reviews?" Yeah, I think potentially. I don't think people... I still think reviews are important. Critically acclaimed games will usually sell pretty damn well. But there is that sense of, even when it comes to like Netflix shows and HBO shows, that the reviews don't matter because you can try it out for yourself. You don't have any skin in the game, so to speak. You didn't pay for it. So it's just like, we're going to try out Outriders and nobody was waiting for reviews just because a lot of people had access to it. So yeah, the importance of reviews are lessened because of it. Humdrung says, "Red Pill me on Game Pass Switch. Wouldn't it hurt Xbox?" Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. iFaceCrook says, "Here's a crazy prediction, not out of the realm of possibility. Last of Us Remake on Game Pass." That would be crazy. Psychonaut says, has there been any news when Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming to Xbox? And will it be in the enhanced version? I've been waiting for that game. Okay, so I'll talk about this for a second here. So, Final Fantasy VII Remake. If you look at the box, it says exclusive until April 10th. So that's tomorrow, right? So basically, after tomorrow, Square Enix could talk about other versions of the game. Presumably, if Sony hasn't extended the exclusivity, right? Now, we know it's coming to PlayStation 5 and, the Final Fantasy VII Remake Interlude, right? Is it called Interlude or is it called, like, something differently? I forget what weird, word they're using to call the PS5 version. So, there's been a lot of speculation about Final Fantasy VII. Like, a lot of people think maybe it's going to come to Xbox the same time it hits PlayStation 5. And I think me and Jez have been a little bit more cautious on this one. We've repeatedly said, expect it not to come to Xbox. Expect Sony to basically have bought another year of exclusivity. And that maybe in 2022 it comes to the Series X. I'm still of that mind frame. Yes, I know of the teases. That Square Enix retweeted one of the Xbox Game Pass posts and had seven pairs of eyes. Oh my God, that means Final Fantasy VII Remake is confirmed. Like, I get all that. But as far as my knowledge, as a few months ago, Final Fantasy VII was not planned to come to Xbox this year. Now, with that said, maybe things changed. Maybe Microsoft dropped some money to Square Enix. We know that they have a deal for like 6 games as reported by IGN. So I'm going to repeat what I said here last week. Expect Final Fantasy VII Remake not to come to Xbox. So if it doesn't get announced, you were expecting it. Everything's perfectly fine. And if it does get announced, well, then you're pleasantly surprised and it's a big announcement and you can be happy about it. I think expecting it to actually happen, like 100% confirmed this is happening, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment. You got anything to add to that, Jez?
No, I agree with you. Like, I don't have any information personally on what's going on with Final Fantasy VII, but I feel the same way. This is a kind of game that Sony thinks is good to keep away from Xbox. It is what it is. It's business. It's, making Xbox look bad or whatever, but it's those kind of moves that'll just force Xbox's hand to be even more aggressive with Game Pass, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that raises the possibility of Resident Evil going straight into Game Pass.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Shout out to Cameron for the super chat. It's a little bit religious, so I'm not going to mention it. Brett, thank you. He says, on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you expect Xbox's upcoming presentations to rank in terms of surprises? So I guess this is a good lead-in to your tweet, Jez, that you put out the other day about not counting out Xbox Global Publishing What exactly did you let me see if I can find your tweet. Do you remember what you tweeted? Because people asked me, people were DMing me like, Rand, what is Jez talking about here? And I'm just like, ooh, Jez knows things. Jez has leaks and stuff like that. Maybe he knows what Global Publishing's doing. Did you delete your tweet, or do you just tweet?
No, I didn't. I didn't delete my tweet. No.
Do you know where? Oh, here it is. So Jez, a couple days ago, tweeted out, "Don't count out Xbox Global Publishing either." Eye emoji. Some really interesting partnerships in the works. Cyclone emoji. What are you teasing here, Jez? Tell the people who are listening to the show. Tell the people who asked me on the Xbox Era Discord what is going on with Xbox Global Pub. We know one game, As Dust Falls. We don't know any others, but it definitely seems like you do. So what can you say about it?
Maybe. Man, I'm not gonna leak the game because it's not fair to the team, and also it spoils a cool announcement, right? You don't want to hear about this game on some random podcast. You want to see it in a game trailer or whatever. That's my my philosophy with regards to game leaks. It's not fair on the team, but I will say that some of the things that I've seen from Xbox Global Publishing recently, some of the things they're working on, are really ambitious and really exciting. Some of these things are they're in very, very early stage. I'm talking prototype development stage, and but they are big games. They're not like I'm not when we talk about global publishing, some people think Battletoads, right? I'm not talking about small games, although I'm sure there are some small games too. But that tweet specifically was referring to big games, big, impressive sounding games that are coming through global publishing partnerships. So I am pretty excited, and I hope that they do come to fruition. And when they do come to fruition, I'll explain what the emoji means. But no, it doesn't mean Ubisoft, and it doesn't mean Dreamcast.
Yeah, people were like, "Oh my God, Jez is confirming Splinter Cell with Ubisoft or Dreamcast backwards compatibility." Like I saw those things, and I was just like, "No." Like you even said to like Alan Walsh, you're like, bookmark this tweet,
Yeah.
About
I'll explain what the emoji means when the game's actually announced. But it's just exciting. It's just exciting. There's a lot of cool stuff. I actually don't know if some of these games will be announced this year because they're quite far out. But when it is announced, I will explain what the hell that emoji means. That's what that is all about. But yeah, there's cool stuff coming. And Microsoft isn't resting on its laurels. Microsoft's making plans that are like 3, 4, even 5 years out. And it's exciting. It's exciting to be on this platform right now.
Yeah,
and all this stuff presumably is going to come to Game Pass day one. So even though they're big games, they're going to be like big games you can get for free in the service, quote unquote free. For your monthly subscription.
A lot of people have this misconception about global publishing that they only do smaller titles like your Battletoads, which we might be getting a Battletoads 2, Jez. I don't know if you saw Delilah was posting up new job listings for working on a beloved established IP. So it's possible they could be doing Battletoads too. But Global Publishing is also responsible for stuff like Sunset Overdrive and Rise, Son of Rome. I'm trying to even think like some of the other Crackdowns. Like they have their hands in a lot of pies, right? But stuff you're referring to is more of the Rise, Son of Rome, Sunset Overdrive variety, rather than the smaller stuff, like big AAA games. Now, there are some questions in chat.
Overdrive's a good comparison.
We have some questions in chat. Someone says, Athiel says, Jez, can you at least tell us the genre of the game?
Well, which one?
Which one is true?
No, I won't. I'll explain when it's revealed.
Yeah.
Just...
What? Okay, so someone else asked, when do you expect these things to be revealed? Is there any chance we go into E3 this year and one of these games is revealed? How close are they, do you think?
I think one of them could be revealed this year, but I'm also not sure because, we're talking very early stages, some of these projects, but at least one of them has been in development for a while. So possibly, maybe, But at the same time, it's kind of like Microsoft's going to have so much stuff to announce. It's potentially if it's a game that's launching maybe later next year, maybe they save it for next year's E3. It depends on how much stuff they've got to pack into this year's E3, I guess. But I also don't know 100% the launch timeframes of some of these projects. But I will say that it took me from being sort of lukewarm about what was coming in the near future to being quite excited about what's coming in the near future. Put it that way.
Yeah, because you were pretty. You wrote that article where you're like, you did, and
I wrote a really negative article where I was like, Microsoft Game Studios needs to do better. And then literally a few weeks later, I see some of the projects they're working on. I'm like, wow, that article looks kind of dumb now and short-sighted. But it just goes to show that there's always things people don't know about. But at the same time, these games could end up scalebounded, for whatever reason. So
we don't.
That's why it's another reason not fair to leak it, because it puts pressure on the teams that are working on it. It puts pressure on to deliver something. And Microsoft's definitely learned its lesson when it comes to announcing things too early. So I don't want to screw up that lesson by being a dick and leaking it just so I can get some traffic on a website. But I just say I'm excited. And
have you ever been this excited for Xbox since you've been covering it? Is this the most excited you've ever been with how everything's going, the deals from Global Publishing that you know of, the 23 studios that they have, including Bethesda, the Game Pass stuff, and how that's progressing?
It feels like not only has a corner been turned, we've started progressing down that corner now. It feels like the Xbox One horrible launch is becoming a distant memory. There's so much cool stuff on the horizon, so much stuff we don't even know about really yet. Game Pass is delivering a tremendous amount of value while we wait for those exclusives. So it's exciting, And Microsoft is at the forefront of new markets with cloud and touch controls for console games and all the technology stuff that I'm interested in, the platform stuff. It's a really exciting time for Xbox right now. And this is kind of it feels like this is what Xbox is unleashed when it's not shackled below the Windows division, when it's not oh, there's Xbox and then there's another, manager and then there's Windows and then there's a senior leadership team. This is Xbox and gaming unleashed. This is gaming as part of Microsoft's core business. The fact that it supplements Azure with its services and probably going to see the id Tech engine get developed more, and maybe we'll see the id Tech engine become the standard for Microsoft's core studios. I don't know. id Tech could be integrated more deeply into DirectX, and which could be integrated even more deeply into Xbox. There's so many different things going on at Xbox right now. It's really hard to keep up. So there's going to be constant non-stop news to cover. She's goes back to what you were saying at the start of the podcast, when we were thinking man, how are we going to find things to talk about every week? Microsoft's been killing it lately. They've been absolutely killing it. And you've seen it reflected in the media. I've seen positive articles from Forbes and Kotaku about Xbox recently, which is something that just did not happen last year.
Yeah, it is very, very interesting. Now, I've been rocking saying this is going to be Xbox's best gen. I've never been more excited. When you look at the media, you could everybody piled on Xbox, and rightfully so, for a lot of the mistakes they made with the Xbox One, the DRM, used games, always online, especially in contrast to what Sony was doing, right? So a lot of people just made fun of them, and they had a lack of content right when Sony was having their best years. 2017, Halo Wars 2, and you launch only with Super Lucky's Tale on your brand new Xbox. Right at the same year, Sony is putting out Horizon Zero Dawn, and they have exclusive Japanese games Nier Automata and Neo and Persona 5. It just looks bad. And then Sony comes out with the 2018 with the God of Wars and the Spider-Mans and Shadow Colossuses, compared to Xbox's low rated at the time Sea of Thieves, even though Sea of Thieves has come on to be a huge success. Over 20 million users.
PUBG.
State of Decay 2. You ended up being right on that. State of Decay 2. You took a little heat from that when he originally put it out. But a lot of media outlets, obviously, they go with the flow. They see where the clicks are. And it was all about PlayStation for those years. So they served the PlayStation audience, and people felt really good about it. But then something interesting happened. Xbox invested. They bought some studios. They purchased Bethesda. They have some really nice quality of life improvements on the system with quick resume and smart delivery and all these different things where PlayStation opted not to have those. So people who were switching generations were like, everything seems a little bit more easier on Xbox. And oh my God, Game Pass is amazing. You have all this stuff. Now you see videos from GameSpot. I watched the other day about how this guy never really identified with Xbox or played because of the whole bro culture, but now he plays Xbox more. You see Tom's guy talking about how he plays on his Series X more than PS5. Kotaku's writing articles. Paul Tassi has switched over. Like, it's just this swell of positive momentum about the things Xbox has kind of been laying the groundwork on since 2017. And then finally, you see the picture start to develop. And a lot of people in the media are like, oh yeah, this, a lot of people in the media necessarily aren't the brightest, as we've seen. But I think now you start to see everything come together and you're like, oh yeah, I can see what Microsoft is going for. So it's definitely a turn. Like, this is something I don't know. You couldn't really imagine last gen, like, these outlets talking very good about Xbox in that manner. And now it's like almost every week there's some article from some website being like, I have both and I'm playing on my Xbox and I'm not turning on my PlayStation 5. So if that really does continue, if Xbox continues to make big announcements, whether or not it's, Game Pass deals like Resident Evil 8 or Battlefield 6, and, we're going to talk about this in a second, Kojima, like if they show off a Kojima game at E3, like E3 is going to be important. Like, I don't think people are going to be like, all right, you can show us CGI trailers again and we'll be perfectly happy. Like, Xbox is going to be like, all right, here's gameplay for games and here's release windows for these games. Because they announced them last year and people are like, okay, Xbox has got stuff coming. But now it's like, okay, we want to see how these games work and how they play and when they're coming out. And if they can hit all these notes correctly, and it definitely seems like they have been this year, outside of like the whole, hey, we're going to double the price of Xbox Live fiasco, it definitely seems that Microsoft is like on the right path. And let's cross our fingers and hope they don't fall over and smack themselves in the face on the ground that sometimes Xbox has been known to do. They have like own self goals sometimes, but it's a super exciting time to be an Xbox fan, to be an Xbox creator. Like, it's just awesome. Like, everything is just kind of turning out like way better than I expected it to be realistically. So, let's see. We've got some super chats I want to get to. Hyperfang Gaming says, does Microsoft own the Sunset Overdrive IP? No, that actually is owned by PlayStation now because Microsoft allowed Insomniac Games to own that IP. Shout out to the best bot kid, Smooth. Rand, when are you going to play Outriders with me? Your current squad holding you back. I'm a level 29, world tier 14. Let's go. Yeah, we're definitely going to have to play sometime. Maybe tonight or tomorrow, kid. You can. I'll get in your backpack and you can carry me to the end of the finish line. Chinook guy says Xbox needs their own superhero game. Will they ever make their own? I have some ideas if they want to hire me. I don't think they'll ever make their own superhero game, but that's nothing saying they couldn't license something with Marvel. But I think that's a little bit doubtful. Alexander Dark says, are those Xbox publishing announcements this year? Jess said possibly. You might see one announced at E3, right?
Yeah, possibly, but it's all in flux.
Yeah,
like I'll let you know when the game I was talking about is released. I'm sure there's plenty of games I don't know about. For example, I had no information about this Kojima publishing deal. So if Jeff Grubb's information about the Kojima deal is true, the games I know about is in addition to that, which are definitely not the Kojima games. So that's wild to think about.
That is definitely wild. What else we got here? Tony Art says, switching the teams to id Tech would be a smart move if the studios are willing to accept the change, But with that, Microsoft has not to pay Epic anymore every quarter, 9% from the game's income just to use Unreal Engine 5. AKA Havoc says, I respect Jez for his outlook on not revealing games. See, I actually had that discussion with you. Because you thought about leaking these games, and I told you no, remember?
Well, I was thinking about teasing them.
Teasing. We could tease, but
I was not gonna leak them.
yeah.
But I was gonna like, maybe tease them vaguely or something. But I decided, nah. Well, I suppose I did tease them, but nah, I was never planning on leaking them.
Yeah. Morgan Mason says, any news on Itagaki's new studio wanting to work with Microsoft, Ninja Gaiden's spiritual successor? Not that I heard of. And we'll see. Maybe Microsoft does, but I don't really think they will. Brett says, you previously mentioned some possible acquisitions, one being massive. How does that massive apply? Massive number of IPs, sheer size? Discord would be... massive could apply to money. Discord would be a massive acquisition.
Who talked about massive acquisitions?
Huh? I might have used the word massive in the title or something like that, but I think last time I talked about Discord, I said it could be like Xbox's next massive billion-dollar acquisition or something. You know what I mean?
All right.
But, if you're spending over $10 billion on something, I would consider that pretty massive, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So
pretty massive.
Yeah, the Bethesda thing was pretty massive. Who knows what happens in the future? I don't know if you got, Jez, if you saw that job listing that was going around. A lot of people sent it to me about the senior business strategy at Xbox, where like they would work on like mergers and acquisitions and all that stuff. I'm just not sure if that really means anything, or if that's just your basic standard like job listing for that particular position. But when you have Phil Spencer and Satya both saying they're going to grow inorganically wherever it makes sense, we both have said previously on the show that we expect Microsoft to acquire more companies in the future. Whether that future is this year or next year, or 2 years from now, who knows? Maybe Sega becomes available in 2 years and that would be massive, or something else. These acquisition stuffs, they could always fall through. So, but Microsoft is definitely on the lookout. So, moving on from that, let me bring up my list of topics. All right. Man, we got a lot here to talk about, Jez. I don't even know where we go from here. You know what? Let's talk about... You know what? Screw it. Let's talk about Kojima. Shall we?
Kojima-san.
So... Did you see all this talk about this PlayStation 5 exclusive game called Abandoned? It released a trailer the other day, and people were theorizing, getting their little conspiracy hats on, and I know Miles would love that reference because he loves his conspiracy theories, right? That it was... So it was from a studio called like Blue Box. It didn't look very good, honestly. And then people were like, this is Kojima's next game. They were going into all these conspiracy theories and stuff like that, to the point where the studio even had to come out and say, no, like, I'm a real person. Like, because they were like, this guy's not real. He's like an actor. And he's like, we're not associated with Hideo Kojima, right? And then...
in the run-up to Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain, they did this weird fake studio viral marketing campaign thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they totally did. But then Jeff Grubb dropped the bomb and was like, Abandoned's not Kojima's game, because Kojima's talking with Microsoft about publishing one of his next games. And that really kind of set the internet on fire. That really, PlayStation fans, from what I could tell, kind of felt a certain way about it, because they felt pretty confident that one of Kojima's next game would be exclusive to the PlayStation, because he is kind of affiliated with the PlayStation brand, right? All of his games are on PlayStation. Metal Gear Solid 4 was exclusive to the PS3. Death Stranding was exclusive to the PS4 before it came to PC, and maybe before it comes to PC, Xbox Game Pass, right? So Jeff also talks about how this is basically one of Microsoft's way of targeting more Japanese partnerships through Kojima. What do you think about all this, Jez?
Well, funny, you mentioned the people's reaction to it because I remember when Kojima appeared on stage on the Xbox stage to demonstrate Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. Revengeance, I love that word.
That game was
And
amazing, by the way. I love Metal
yeah,
Gear's Metal Gear. Was it Metal Gear Rising Revengeance? What a title!
Metal Gear. It was called. I think it was called Metal Gear Solid Revengeance, and then changed to Metal Gear Rising Revengeance. I think. But yeah, that's like one of my favorite Metal Gear games. Like that is probably my favorite hack and slash game of all time. I think that game is viciously underrated. I just love it so much. But again, it was sort of like Kojima worked with Platinum Games on that, I believe. But Kojima was on stage regardless, and he didn't say too much if I remember right. But it was sort of like a big deal that Kojima was on the Xbox stage. It was like, oh my god, I can't believe this, because Kojima is associated with the PlayStation brand. Even I do. Metal Gear Solid 1, 2, 3, and 4 are four of my favorite games of all time. Not a big fan of Metal Gear Solid 5, but I don't necessarily blame Kojima for that. If you want to look into the history of the whole Konami Kojima falling out, it's right there on Google. But alas, I'm a big fan of Kojima's work, and always have been. I haven't managed to get through Death Stranding yet, but I keep trying. But alas, I'm still super intrigued by this, and Jeff Grubb has a pretty rock solid track record.
No, he doesn't, Jazz. No, he doesn't.
No.
Well, here's the thing. I love Jeff Grubb, right? I think he's always right, and I don't mean he doesn't have a good track record. I mean, the PlayStation fans were trying to discredit him about this rumor simply based on his Xbox Live is going free. Remember? I think I sent you the tweet. So it's like, he can't be right about this because he was wrong about Xbox Live going free. Even though Jeff gave no date on it or when it would happen. Even though Jeff has been right about a whole bunch of other stuff that you can, collate. Just like me and you. Me and you have been right about so many things. And sometimes it's hard to, think about all the things we've been right about. But the people listening to the show or watching the videos or follow us know that one of the reasons they follow us is because we can break down the stuff, we explain it, and most importantly, we're always mostly right about the things we're saying, right? So the PlayStation fans, they don't want it to be true, so they're trying to attack Jeff's character. It's always a political thing, right? That's how politicians do it. Oh, they try to discredit what you're saying based on, how you've been wrong before. Even though Jeff put no timetable on Xbox Live going free, even though both me and you have said the similar things. Both me and you have said, Xbox Live's going free. We've never said when it's going to go free. We always said it'd be sometime in the future. I just find it funny that suddenly people will hold up Jeff and be like, he's right. But when he says something that goes against what you want because you're on a different platform, suddenly you attack him because, he got this one thing wrong, right? So I believe Jeff has a lot of great sources at Xbox and throughout the industry. I think what he's reporting is true. But I just wanted to mention that you already see it. You already see a lot of these people not want it to be true because they're attacking someone's character regarding leaks and things like that, right?
Yeah. It's pretty sad to see, but Jeff's track record speaks for itself at the end of the day. And when he speaks up and, puts his name to something, I believe it. The ultimate difference between Jeff Grubb and the people that do this and the people who are commenting on it, Jeff's real name is on that claim. Mm-hmm. People who make other claims who often end up being wrong hide behind anonymity and hide behind an avatar and a fake name, So there's no accountability. But when you put in your name against a claim, there has to be a degree of accountability.
And when you write something in a website that you work for, like you've mentioned before, we'll tease stuff, we'll speculate on the podcast because it's fun. But if you only write something on your website, Windows Central, when you have 100% verifiable sources, and I'm sure Jeff is the same. So
Yeah,
It's one
because
thing.
it reflects on the website.
Yeah, exactly.
Not just reflects on your reputation; it reflects on the website's reputation. So the fact that Jeff will go out there and put his neck, his personal reputation, and VentureBeat's reputation on the line by making this claim, but people who hide behind an avatar, who make claims on Reset Era or whatever, they can't put themselves in the mindset of someone who is, accountable, because they're not accountable. They're anonymous. So I believe Jeff, because he's made himself accountable for that. But he also, there are also caveats. The deal might fall through. Kojima might ask for $1 billion.
Well,
he wants to make
Jeff
ultimate game.
Jeff did say that the deal is with the lawyers now.
Right.
So to me, that basically says, look, we can kind of also tie this into the shelf, right? We all knew there was a reason why Phil put that Kojima Productions Ludensdahl next to an Xbox logo, right? It meant something. And basically, I don't think Phil would tease it that way if there was a chance the deal could fall through. So either it was already agreed upon and the lawyers are going over, basically what I'm saying is there's no way Phil did that.
Formalities.
Yeah, it's all just everything's agreed to. Now it's just like everybody's got to check their I's and O's, right? So while Jeff says he doesn't know if, it's completed, I mean, it's looking pretty good. And this basically speaks to some of the issues that Xbox's fans have had with Microsoft and Xbox about lack of Japanese support. People always be like, listen, why do we not get Neo? Why have we not gotten Persona? Why have we not, up until recently, gotten the Yakuza series? Why does, these big Japanese developers, why did they skip our platform? And the answer is always usually something along the lines of, because their games don't sell, right? But Phil made it a priority to kind of change that, because it also takes out a bullet from the gun that PlayStation has. If Yakuza and Persona and these Japanese titles are also on Xbox, that gives a person less of a reason to maybe go with PlayStation. Maybe it's like, okay, well, I'll get an Xbox. And with the recent reports, which we'll delve into later, about Sony kind of not really investing in Japan anymore with the recent shutdown of the Japan studio and the Bloomberg article and stuff, a lot of Japanese developers are kind of not really happy with what Sony's doing. Microsoft could see this as a tactical advantage to garner more support for Japanese, games on the platform. And Hideo Kojima, one of the biggest, names from over there. So if you could get his next game, whatever it is, whether it's his horror game, maybe like a PT horror game, or whatever he would make, right? And whatever he would make is going to be marketed huge. Like his trailers are always over the top, but people love him, right? So, and if you use him to get his game to speak to other Japanese developers that like, hey, it's time. Sony is backing out from Japan. They don't really care about this anymore. They're only interested in big blockbusters, as by Jason's article. Xbox is over here wanting Japanese games, but you're always kind of concerned that they're not 100% behind Japanese studios. That would be an incredible sign that, Microsoft is really 100% interested in that market, and they do have xCloud, where we know the Japanese market loves mobile, so it's potentially in your best interest to start releasing these games. Whether it's taking the check from Game Pass or just releasing them there, because if Kojima's next game is exclusive to Xbox, I would imagine a lot of Japanese, people would love to play that game and might want to invest in Xbox. And at that point, you need to serve those people and give them games that they want. And you have other Japanese creators doing that as well. So I think this is a brilliant move. Personally, I love Hideo Kojima's games. I love Metal Gear. And I love Death Stranding. Well, I don't love Death Stranding. I really like Death Stranding. I'm actually one of the... Because I know what people will say. I know what PlayStation fans who are listening to the show will be like, look at all these stupid, X-bots, right? who said Kojima was overrated, who hated on Death Stranding, and now they're fawning over the idea of a Kojima exclusive, right? That's exactly what they'll say.
I never slated Death Stranding. Like, I think I said that I got bored because I did. I got to that. You told me.
I told you.
I'd get to a certain part and I'd get bored, and I did. I got to a part where I was just like, man, I'm just kind of over this now. But while Death Stranding is not my favorite Kojima game, I appreciate it. I appreciate its weirdness. It feels like a game that almost shouldn't exist. Like, and it's still got elements that just sort of make my hair stand on end. Like the music, and when you first like doing your big marathon across the big landscape, and the music kicks in and the rain and stuff. It's such an like there's still elements of that Kojima genius in there, even if like maybe I don't know, the sort of the gameplay loop, if you want to call it that, was sort of a little bit tough to get my head around, I guess. But I appreciate that it exists, and I appreciate that he's someone who has the clout to make AAA experiences that are truly unique and something different, you know.
Look,
there's literally no one else in the whole industry who could pull together a cast of characters, Hollywood-grade actors like he did, and make a game like Death Stranding. There's no one else in the whole industry that can do that, and it's just cool to think what he would do with the Microsoft budget.
If he could do like a PT horror game or whatever he would do, it doesn't matter. It would be huge. Like, and this is something if I can imagine them coming to an agreement soon. I think this is an announcement you want to make at E3 right now, right? Because we're at the beginning of this generation. Consoles are still basically, you know, there's still a shortage. You can't really get an Xbox. You can't really get a PlayStation 5. You can't really get, like, you know, PC GPUs. But people are going to basically start thinking about what console and what ecosystem I want to invest in. And we know Game Pass is on the front line, changing people's minds. And if they could get bigger titles, it's going to do a lot more. You can't just stop. You can't just have Outriders MLB. Like, you got to continue the momentum. And we know Xbox has a whole bunch of studios, but Sony's going to show God of War and Horizon and probably other games. But if Microsoft could have just a tease about, hey, Kojima's next game is with Xbox, that potentially could turn a lot of people who are on the fence, who haven't bought a console yet simply because they're not able to be like, all right, I see what Xbox is doing. I see what Game Pass is putting down. I see what Xbox is making from their internal studios. I see what Bethesda's doing. All those are exclusive, and they got Kojima. I think the choice is clear. Whether I can get a Series S or Series X, or whether I'm playing on PC, this is where I'm going to choose to go. That could be a huge announcement. Now, as Cognito would say, I'm Randall Petty, right? I do love the drama that happens sometimes on Twitter. I just really don't stick my nose into it. I want this to happen mostly because I love Kojima games. I would play it regardless if it was on PS5 or if it was Xbox exclusive. It doesn't matter. I'm playing the game. I would like to see the fallout. I would like to see people cry about it. I would like to see the PlayStation fans who talked about how Kojima is a genius, and how Death Stranding was a masterpiece, right? Suddenly flip-flop on him and say, he's overrated and Death Stranding was always garbage, right? Because that would be entertaining to me. And also, you know what would be entertaining to me? All the Xbox fans who said Kojima was overrated and Death Stranding was trash suddenly would start praising Kojima and his game. Because you know it always happens when things like this happen. Happened with Hellblade, happened with Ninja Theory, because that is entertaining to me. Because it really doesn't pay to be a fanboy. At least not a fanboy in that sense where every single negative thing that happens for whatever platform you identify with, you have to go and damage control on Twitter. Or, hey, you know, they're working with this company, so now everything was like, I want that to happen because that would be entertaining to me. I would get on Twitter and I would just read the forums posts. I would just see the Twitter posts, all the people crying, and I would absolutely love it. So yeah, I want it to happen personally because I love Kojima's games and because I want to see the drama that would ensue if it would happen, because that is hilarious to me. But
Oh, dear.
to tie more into this, Jeff Grubb also kind of talked about on his podcast today that everything on Phil's shelf has some meaning, potentially significant meaning. Now, we've speculated this before. So we already know the Kojima doll is basically his next game. The Watch Dogs Legion skull, Jez, I think we both said Ubisoft games and Game Pass at the end of the year, right? Watch Dogs Legion and Game Pass, stuff like that. Sekiro Game of the Year edition is there too, right? I think that maybe implies Sekiro's coming to Game Pass, probably a start of a partnership with Activision, because Activision is one of the few publishers that have not supported Game Pass. You know, Ubisoft has supported it. 2K's even supported it. 2K, or Take-Two, is basically just reintroduced Grand Theft Auto 5 on Game Pass right now. It was in there a year ago. Now it's back. And this time, it actually has the cloud version, so you can play Grand Theft Auto 5 and Grand Theft Auto Online on your phone. Now, that may not be a big announcement for me and you or anybody in this chat, but that potentially could be huge. First time Grand Theft Auto is available via mobile, right? So you can look at all the different publishers out there, and they all support Game Pass to some extent. And the one that really hasn't is Activision. So getting Sekiro on Game Pass, I think, is something that's going to happen. But then what if it goes a step beyond? What if it also means Elden Ring Game Pass day one? That's something you got to think. That's something you got to think about as well. Then what else is on there? He had a Life is Strange thing. Life is Strange True Colors was announced. Maybe that could be a Game Pass day one release. Microsoft does have a pretty good thing with Square Enix going on right now. But then the big one is the Nintendo Switch. So if Jess says everything on there has some significant meaning, what do you think what do you think and then, you know, I've actually DM'd Phil about this, and we kind of had a laugh. So I kind of feel somewhat stupid for talking about this, but like, you know, with people saying, with this Kojima thing being almost confirmed, or at least confirmed that they're talking and all this other stuff, I feel like Phil's a smart man, and he did this stuff on purpose to drive speculation and engagement. What do you think Nintendo Switch being on the shelf means? Because people will say, well, Phil was in that Nintendo documentary on Crackle, but I think that's too low of a bar. Personally,
I can't believe we've had 3 or 4 podcasts talk about Phil's bloody shelf.
I know we have. It's amazing though, because once one
Phil's
thing,
shelf,
but
he's like an industry legend now.
I know. But once one thing gets confirmed, it basically, you look at it and you're like, well, if that ends up being true and someone else is saying everything's significant, then you got to take a deeper look at it. And like, to me, I mean, xCloud and Game Pass on Switch is the obvious go-to on this. We know Microsoft wants Game Pass everywhere, right? And while Microsoft
acquiring Nintendo,
no, Microsoft, they already tried to. But like, when I look at mobile, and yeah, you can play your game, you can play your Xbox games and all this stuff on mobile, Android phones and your tablets, but they're not really the best way to play a mobile game. And we know it's coming to iOS and Windows PC via streaming soon as well. But like, the Switch is basically a mobile device that has 80 million users, because that's how much is sold. And if Microsoft and Nintendo could cut some sort of deal to have a curated version of Game Pass, where it's like, you could log on there, you sign up, you have Xbox's first party, and they're all streamable. So the Bethesda games and Xbox games on the go with the Switch, like, you know, I mean,
the Nintendo Switch is the perfect xCloud device, and let's face it, it's the perfect size screen. It's got it's got the same Xbox controls. The buttons are even in the same place. Even the bloody joysticks are in the right place. It is the ultimate xCloud device. So I would think like Microsoft has to want to get Game Pass on there in some form. Now, I don't necessarily think that we'll get the full Game Pass on there, because Nintendo wants to sell those games too. It wants to sell Doom, blah blah blah. It wants the ability to sell those games, but at the same time, as we've seen, Rand, from Outriders, Game Pass doesn't necessarily seem to hurt retail sales. In fact, it might do the opposite thing. Maybe if you play Doom in Game Pass, You'll be like, oh man, I wish I had a version of this I could play where I wasn't connected to the internet. Oh, I can buy Doom for Nintendo Switch. So, maybe even we do get the full cloud version of Xbox Game Pass on there if Microsoft has the data to show that Game Pass can function almost like a demo platform, especially given that the cloud is something that you can't always use unless you're like at home 24/7 like me. But regardless, you might just version just for that extra little bit of latency or whatever. But in any case, I think Microsoft has to want to get the cloud version on there, whether it's a curated version that has specific games on there that Nintendo doesn't sell on its own store, or whether it's just the whole cloud thing and Microsoft's just like sorry, I'm choking. Microsoft's just like, look at the data we've got from Outriders. It doesn't hurt retail sales. In fact, it might even help them. Give us a chance with this and stuff like that. And here's a bunch of money too. And you get a cut of subscriptions and, it'd be lots of money. And you get Halo because there's no other way you'd be able to get Halo on your platform. And you get all these other bloody games on there as well. The high fidelity, complicated games that can't be ported very easily. So I think there is a decent chance that we could see Xbox Game Pass on Switch. Maybe part of Game Pass Ultimate, maybe a separate, tier that you buy or whatever. And
I mean,
it's wild to think about, but I think it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be a separate tier personally. Like, you already have Xbox Game Pass for console, Xbox Game Pass for PC. What's to stop saying Xbox Game Pass for Switch and an Xbox Game Pass for Steam, right? It's all just Xbox Game Pass, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. We do have some super chats I want to read through really quickly. We got Judah saying, anyone heard if Microsoft is planning to start bringing more games to BC anytime soon? Still missing a lot of my favorite 360 games. Did they say that they were actually going to pursue getting more games in the 360 side of things, Jez? Like Jason Ronald and those guys?
I think they've basically what they've said is never say never. But it's just like not their priority right now.
Right, yeah. Yeah, fair enough. It's probably not the priority. Sylar says, for E3 I expect Halo, of course, and Hellblade 2, but I don't feel like anything is ready to show yet. After all, this is the first E3 for new gen, so my expectations are low across the board. Thoughts? I think they're going to have to show stuff, like gameplay. I'm not sure people would really appreciate more CGI trailers. So I would expect. I think people are expecting. Listen, we sat through last year's showcase. It was all short CGI trailers. We're gonna want more this time, and I think Microsoft realizes that. At least I hope so. So maybe you get less announcements, but more like gameplay stuff, which would be my hope. I don't necessarily need to know everything Xbox is doing. I have a pretty good idea of the things they're doing. I just want to see what the games look like. And more importantly, I want to know when I can actually play them. Like, should I be expecting Fable in 2022 or 2023? And if you don't have it at this year's E3, then it's like, oh, well, it's probably not 2022. So I kind of want to know what Microsoft's plan is for the immediate future for this year, plus what they're planning for next year. So that's kind of what I expect, their E3 stuff will be. Dead Planet says, Konami and Xbox being at E3 at the same time could mean something. Imagine the heartbreak if Xbox secured Silent Hill or Metal Gear Solid in some form or fashion. Mr. Squean says, Kojima working with Xbox has PlayStation fans so upset even Morrissey would consider it dramatic. And Cowhand says, Matt from Reset Era says there are lots of clues on the shelf. Yes, Matt, the guy who's always willing to confirm other people's leaks, but never is the one sticking out his neck to actually leak something. Very interesting. I wonder, you know what I mean? Yes, I've heard that too. Oh, yes, of course you have. You have no skin in the game. It's just someone else has done all the legwork and gotten all the things and says this is happening, and all you got to do is like, yep, heard the same, and everybody's like, oh my God, he knows. It's like, get out of here.
Oh man.
Anyways, so yeah, I think the Kojima thing, I kind of do want that to happen personally. But moving on from that, Jez, Xbox is returning to E3. You wrote an article. You basically broke down what to expect at GameStack Live this year. We know there's also what's happening in gaming coming sometime in May, which we also talked about. And then E3 confirmed they're back in a digital format. Basically, the rumor is Xbox will have a show that will lead right into Bethesda's show. So what do you think? What's going on with this?
I have no inside knowledge of what their E3 plans are, but I'm not surprised because Microsoft is a big donor and supporter of the ESA that runs E3 and also lobbies the government on behalf of the US government, I should say, lobbies the US government on behalf of the games industry. Lobbying is a very, very interesting and important part of American politics, apparently, which is, why you even allow corporations to have so much involvement in your politics, I have no idea. But that's for another podcast, maybe. But anyway, Microsoft supports the ESA, and that's why they're going to be attending E3. Even when Microsoft moved, it's because Microsoft moved its like core E3 experience out of the LA Convention Center and across the road to the Microsoft. What's it called? Microsoft Convention Center. Microsoft has its own convention center in LA. There used to be the Nokia Convention Center, I believe, and then Microsoft bought Nokia with it, the convention center, and then rebranded the convention center. I believe. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, Microsoft has its own convention center. But even though like they moved out of there, they were still like part of the whole E3 thing, and the whole festivities and whatever. But they were just like, well, we want to have our own space, we want to have our own area. It was a lot of walking, Rand.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of walking that year, walking from LA Convention Center to the Microsoft Theater and then backwards and forwards all day to go to different appointments. So a lot of good exercise was had because of that. But I digress. I don't know if they're going to do sort of like separate events. I would expect they are because Bethesda's going to have so much stuff they need to show. Microsoft's going to have so much stuff they need to show. They're literally two publishers at this point. Two publishers worth of content at one show. That's like 1 million hours long. You're going to need a break in between all that, I would expect. But I think like there'll be crossover too. I think like Todd Howard's going to be on stage at Xbox's thing to solidify the fact that Bethesda and Xbox are the same team now. They'll probably demo a game at Xbox's showcase, I would have thought, just to again people's eyeballs will be on it. Maybe they'll show a trailer for a game at Microsoft show and then show the gameplay for the game at Bethesda's show. Because Todd likes to do these really long in-engine demos, these live gameplay things, which I love, by the way. I remember when Todd demoed Fallout 3 for the first time, and I was utterly mind blown. I was like, oh my god, this is like my dream game, Fallout 3 back in the day. Nobody quite delivers the hype like Todd Howard does. So I think that's definitely something that I could see happening. Like they show the trailer for Starfield at Xbox's stage, and then they're like, make sure you watch the Bethesda showcase later tomorrow or later today for the gameplay session. I think that's something they could do. But again, I have no inside knowledge of what they're going to show at E3 or what it's looking like now or how it's shaping up. But I could see it going down something like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's just I hope all the shows are condensed into that time frame of June 12th to the 15th. I think is what they said. Because
I hated last summer, man.
So like personally, like I love all the announcements kind of like centralized into a single week. I'm down for hey, here's an hour and a half Xbox Game Studio shows, a 30-minute break, and now we got an hour and a half Bethesda show the same day on like Sunday the 13th, because Microsoft tends to like to do things on Sunday, at least when it came to physical shows at E3. Who knows with the digital stuff? So yeah, E3's back digital, so I'm just looking forward to all the gaming announcements. But moving on from that, Jez, we need to. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about PlayStation here. So yes, Xbox podcast. We pretty much mostly talk about Xbox, but we'll talk about PlayStation stuff when it does kind of impact Xbox, or mainly because it's our show and we'll talk about whatever the goddamn hell we want to talk about. So kind of piggybacking off of last week's discussion about MLB The Show coming to Game Pass on day one, and how that was a baller move by Phil to basically make a PlayStation first party game more attractive on Xbox than it is on PlayStation. Sony responded. They took their time. They didn't do it right away, but they eventually responded and said basically something along the lines of this was MLB's decision to reach more audience. Do you have anything you wanted to kind of add to that?
I don't know. I just think it's interesting. Like there was a couple of articles that were like, this is a bad look for Sony, and it probably was a bad look for Sony. $70 on PlayStation, which is something that's being mandated by Sony, by the way. Whereas Microsoft's not mandating $70. If you notice, a lot of games on Xbox are still $60. Microsoft's own games are still $60. I'm sure that'll change in the future. I'm sure, like, if the industry moves to $70, Microsoft will as well. But as of right now, that's not the case. But even still, $70 is a lot to swallow for a lot of people. And, it's even more in Europe. Like some countries, it's gone up to $90. And in Canada and Australia, it's even more because of taxes on top. It's really annoying, to see. But at the same time, it just shines a spotlight on how the value that Xbox Game Pass is driving. And then, if Microsoft keeps it up, there's a situation that could potentially happen where Microsoft's just like, this month, let's drop the price of this game to $0. This month let's drop the price of this game to $0. Just to keep hammering home the delta in value between the two platforms when it comes to that stuff. If there's more Outriders situations where it's like $70 on one platform and $0 on the other, or $10 for the month or whatever, alongside a boatload of other games, I think the narrative will continue to shift from the media in favor of Xbox. And especially we're seeing a grassroots resurgence of Xbox sales. Like, for example, Xbox Series S was the top selling console in India, I think, this week too.
I did see that.
Which doesn't say a lot. It doesn't say a lot because there's no stock right now. But at the same time, it's better than it not selling, and it shows that there is demand, and it's really interesting to see that it's the Series S that is going to be delivering a lot of value. And if you're a value-minded customer, Series S with the Xbox Game Pass is an amazing combo to participate in what is becoming an increasingly expensive industry, So it's fun. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, it's definitely fun seeing the people who were just like, I don't know, this makes PlayStation, and I said in my video, it makes them look awful that Xbox took a game that PlayStation made and made it their platform the best place to play Sony's own game. And like the response from PlayStation's fans were like, why do they get it for free and why do we have to pay full price? It was such just a killer move by Phil. And I want to see more of this. That's why I'm hoping they can get Battlefields and the Resident Evils, because if you really want to change people's opinions, you need to hit them all the time. You need to make it a consistent thing, right?
I think a lot of people have said that Phil was acting too nice and that.
The Kumbaya crowd, right? Oh, he's Kumbaya. Yeah.
Phil was too nice with the competitors, but Phil didn't get to the senior leadership table of the world's biggest company, or number 2 or number 3 company, by being not business minded. There's the fact that he was able to do it while still also being honest and stuff is a testament to his character. But it shows as well that you've got to be competitive to get to that level of a career. You have to be competitive. So it definitely feels like the competition's on now. It was just being held back by, Microsoft's organizational structure and, the lack of belief from the senior leadership team that gaming could be something more than a side project from Microsoft. But here we are. Gaming is now integral to Azure. Gaming is now part of the senior leadership table, and gaming is now a pillar business for Microsoft's wider pie, you know.
Indeed. I
And
mean,
Phil did all that.
yes, he
Phil-
did. And he's been on the job for 7 years now. 7 years, because he basically got it in 2014. I might make a video on that, showcasing how Phil has changed Xbox for the better.
He hates that. He hates
I know he
taking
hates
credit.
that, but it's
He
just like
wants-
it's just like
he
a
wants,
quarterback, right? A quarterback
Yeah.
gets all the credit for when the team does well, and then all the blame for when the team does, poorly. So
what is a quarterback exactly?
quarterback in the NFL. Like, he's the guy that calls the plays.
What
and
do they do?
hands off
What does a
and-
quarterback do?
he passes to the receivers and hands off to the running backs. And when the teams do well, people are always like, "Oh, it's the quarterback." That's the central force behind it. And if the teams aren't doing well, it's like, "Oh, well, the quarterback is the reason they're not." Right? And it's an American thing. Like, obviously football, football people know what I'm talking about here, but
Hand egg.
it's true. Like, because you don't know everybody that works at Xbox, right? You only know the people visible. You know the Major Nelsons, you know the Jeff Rubensteins, maybe. You know the Jason Ronalds and stuff. But the one who basically is the face of Xbox is Phil. And since he runs the entire organization, any success or failures that they have are basically put at his doorstep, because that's who most people know about Xbox, and he runs it. So while it's always a team effort, he'll get the majority of the credit and the majority of the blame, whether that's right or wrong. It's just the way it is. We got some more super chats I want to get to. Thank you guys for all the support. It means a lot. Humdrug says, "Hey, Jez, any idea what Greg Mails is working on? You're from the UK."
Great.
He works at Rare. He's the one. I think he was the one who did Banjo.
Yeah.
So,
I have no idea.
yeah.
I have no idea. I've
Maybe-
met him. He's a cool guy.
Dan
but I have
Becker.
no idea what he's working on.
Dan Becker says, "Love hearing you call out Era's fake insider Matt." Gaming Addict. Shout out to Addict, Lord Addict. He says, "Hello, Jez." And who is that again? Just kidding. Hey, Rand. I Grow Fire says,
Randall chopped liver.
yeah, Randall Chop Liver. I Grow Fire says 1440p 120 is broken on many PC monitors for Series X. Any chance Jez can get some eyeballs or influence on that?
What? He's broken?
He says 1440p and 120 FPS is broken on many PC monitors when using the Series X.
I believe they are looking at some of this stuff. I have spoken to them about the fact that 1440p 120 FPS can't do HDR. I think that's a limitation of the protocol, unfortunately, but it is what it is. I don't know specifically about this issue, but I'll gather that up, because sometimes what I do is I gather up a few technical concerns and then ask Xbox PR if they can have someone address them all at once, just so we can get the status on them. So I will add that to the list, and hopefully I can get an answer for you soon.
Excellent. Let's see. We also have Wiley Coyote says, "Do you guys think that Sony and Netflix deal for Spider-Man exclusivity is a signal that Marvel and Sony partnership is on the way out?" I don't think so. I mean, Marvel and Sony in regards to basically the video game. That's
Does
interesting.
Sony license Spider-Man for video games then?
Yeah, they do. Sony only actually owns the movie rights. Sony would, for the video game, they would have to license that from Marvel or from Disney. I guess
But
it really
the fact
would
they own the movie rights gives them leverage that Xbox doesn't.
potentially, yeah, potentially. But then again, we saw with MLB, they were happy with PlayStation until they weren't, and they were like, "Hey, to renew this, you're going to have to put this on other platforms." And then MLB basically went behind Sony's back and was like, "No, we're going to put this on Game Pass." So could there come a time where Marvel wants to do another Spider-Man game and they're just like, "You know what, Sony, you're going to have to also put this on PC and Xbox," as pertaining to a licensed deal like that? I mean, who knows? Who knows? I guess anything is possible, although I don't really expect Spider-Man to show up on Xbox, if at all, ever. But don't be shocked when Spider-Man eventually makes its way to PC, like majority of PlayStation exclusives will, like God of War, Spider-Man. We know Days Gone is coming. Although that's kind of weird that it is, considering there's going to be no sequel, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Dead Planet says, rank these games most likely to get gameplay at E3 2021. Everwild, Perfect Dark, Fable, Avowed, Hellblade 2. So I would say I'll rank it from least likely to most likely. I would say Fable and Perfect Dark don't get any gameplay. I don't think we see either of those games. And then I think Avowed, Everwild, and Hellblade 2 are most likely to get gameplay reveals. Do you agree with that, Jez? Would you rank them any differently?
I agree. I think there's an outside chance we might not see Hellblade.
Man, if we don't see Hellblade, do you think that means it's not next year and more 2023?
I think that maybe if it's fall 2023, maybe they'll show it next year. But I could be wrong. Maybe we'll get a new trailer, but I don't know if necessarily we'll get a gameplay demo.
Man,
I think it might be too early.
The first game that Microsoft revealed for Series X in December of 2019, not releasing until 4 years later.
I could be wrong, but
Yeah. I mean, I've always kind of been on the assumption that Hellblade was 2022, but the pandemic did happen, so
I think it will be 2022, but I think like you talk about pandemic and stuff, actually taking the time to actually make the gameplay demo for something that's coming a year and a half away, you could just demo it next year.
Yeah, but they already had that weird presentation this past at the showcase where they just talked about stuff and showed old footage. I don't know. I think it would really be a bad look for that game to then just skip this showcase, because then people would start being like, is something wrong with Hellblade? I don't know. I've always been under the assumption it was 2022, but it's potential. I mean, we already
maybe they want to make it bigger and bolder.
Maybe, potentially. You could be right on that. Gunstar says, nobody in Europe cares about MLB, but I'll try it now. That's true. MLB is basically a U.S. announcement. Nobody cares about baseball in the rest of the world, unless maybe Japan. I know baseball is popular in Japan.
Yes.
Adam says, Rand, we are from Chicago. We don't know what a quarterback is either. That is true. The Chicago Bears haven't had a quarterback worth a damn in basically my entire lifetime. And don't even get me started on
Chicago Bears?
Yeah, that's the football team here. The Handeg team.
I thought it was the Chicago Bulls.
Chicago Bulls are the basketball team. The Chicago Blackhawks are the hockey team. And the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox are the baseball teams. And the Chicago Fire is the soccer team.
Who's the Red Sox then?
The Red Sox is the baseball team in Boston.
Who are the Mets then?
The Mets are one of the baseball teams in New York. You have the New York Mets and the New York Yankees. And the Yankees are the bigger franchise, and the Mets are the little brother. And if Tim Dog is listening to this, or some other people, they're probably upset. Basically, the Yankees are the Cubs and the Mets are the White Sox. So. But yeah,
I've heard of all these teams for some reason, but I've never watched baseball except for that hilarious clip where the dude's throwing the ball and then it hits a pigeon.
That is pretty good, isn't it?
That is such bad luck for the pigeon.
That very, very, very bad luck for the pigeon. But imagine the physics of that. That Randy Johnson, a guy who throws a baseball at 100 miles an hour, and a pigeon flying across the screen, for them to interact and him just hit the pigeon right on as he's throwing it. That is, that's crazy.
Oh man, what a way to die. I feel sad for the pigeon now.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Paul says, great show, guys. Phil is a people person and will never take credit himself. It's always team before individual. And Brad says, yeah, $120 to $130 here in Australia for upcoming PlayStation games in the PS Store, or from gaming retailers like EB Games. Yeah, game prices are kind of getting ridiculous. And I mean, I guess I'm lucky I'm here in the States and the games are at most either 60 or 70. But overseas in the UK, aren't they 80 now, essentially? In Australia, even more? I mean, that's expensive, right?
Yeah.
which makes Game Pass look like a much, much better deal because it's only $1 potentially, $10, if you just want console Game Pass, or $15 if you want, the whole package. But so we talked about Sony responding to the MLB deal. They said they didn't have anything to do with it. MLB made them bend the knee to Xbox and put the game on Game Pass. But Jason Schreier wrote an article today that had a lot of people really looking at Sony studios in a different way. And I know a lot of PlayStation fans have been looking for some good news to talk about, because it definitely seems like Sony's been silent recently quite a bit, especially because, in the light of how loud Xbox has been with some of their stuff. And in that, he talked about how basically Sony Bend, who'd made Days Gone, even though Days Gone was profitable, that Sony didn't want to pursue a Days Gone 2, and that they were basically given like a Uncharted game sort of to work with Naughty Dog, but a lot of people at Days Gone were like, we don't want to be the support studio for Naughty Dog, and a lot of people left the studio because they weren't happy with it, and eventually they ended up pitching Sony on like, let us work on our own stuff. And I guess Jason said a month ago they're working on a new franchise, but that's a lot of time wasted because Days Gone came out in 2019 and we're in 2021. So if they haven't really even started on their next project, that's obviously going to be some time away. And then there's the whole Last of Us remake, that there was like a part of Sony, like I forget the name of it, like the visual something or other. Somebody in chat will tell me the name. That goes around and helps other teams finish off games, but they kind of wanted their own presence, and they started like a Last of Us remake, but PlayStation really didn't want them to have their own, not like studio sort of, so they basically put a whole bunch of Naughty Dog developers to work on this, and not basically became a Naughty Dog project to the point where like the people who started the project all left. And the idea of a Last of Us remake is kind of weird to me, considering the game came out in 2013. It had a remaster on the PS4 where it ran at 60 frames. And it's like, does Last of Us need a remake? Like, I understand you have the HBO show for Last of Us coming soon. Yeah, the visual, shout out to Sam Tolbert. He says the VASG, the Visual Arts and Services Group, was basically doing a Last of Us remake, and then Sony essentially handed it to Naughty Dog to do, and a lot of people were upset with that. And the idea of a Last of Us remake is just so weird to me because I don't really think that game needs it.
No, it seems early to me.
It does seem incredibly early.
Like I played Last of Us really late for the first time, like a couple of years ago, and I think, was that the remastered version I played? But it held up really well, because it's a high quality game. I can't imagine why that would need a remake. Like, is the new one so mechanically different that it needs a remake? I don't know.
I don't know why they would do that. I don't really get it.
I mean, it's free money, right?
I mean, sure, the remakes cost less, and even in the article, like Herman Hulst was like, like he said in the article, like the money on this project is a little bit too high, and he wasn't really enamored with it. But basically the article talks about how Sony is a little bit more risk adverse now, right? You used to get more quirky titles or smaller stuff from like some of Sony's other studios, like the Japan studio. Now they're gone, right? And it definitely seems like Sony is strictly focusing on the big blockbusters, that make them money. They want the God of Wars and the Spider-Mans and the Horizons. And if you're not of that caliber, then they don't want to invest in you. So maybe that's a good thing that Sony changed their mind about Sony Bend helping on whatever Naughty Dog was doing and letting them do a new IP. Maybe they feel that they'll do better. But I know a lot of PlayStation fans are like, and me personally, I played Days Gone, and when I played it, I said, it was the runt of the PlayStation exclusive litter, but Sony usually gives games a second chance, and that's where like they succeed, like the Uncharted to the Uncharted 2s, where it's like, okay, now you can see like there's improvements to be made, and there's definitely improvements that Sony Ben could have learned from Days Gone to Days Gone 2, and it's a little bit disappointing that they won't get to do that, and now they're on to something else. And I think a lot of PlayStation fans had it in their minds because they made fun of Xbox, and rightfully so, for a lot of Xbox's title franchises this gen not getting sequels. Rise Son of Rome, Sunset Overdrive, Quantum Break, and Recore, right? They were all just one and dones. And one of the things PlayStation fans always held over Xbox fans was our games get sequels because they sell enough and they're big. And this kind of flies in the face of that, because even though Days Gone 2 was successful, it wasn't good enough to get a sequel, and now they're starting on something new. I guess it really depends on your perspective about what Jason's talking about in this article. If you're someone that loves the blockbuster titles that Sony makes, then you're probably like, this isn't that big of a deal. Sony's still going to make the stuff that I want to play. But if you're somebody who wants a more diversity of titles from a first party, and you're not really all in on third-person action adventures that Sony likes to make, then you're probably looking at PlayStation today and the moves they're making with shutting down, the Japan studio and all this different stuff. Like, you're probably saying, like, wait a minute, like, maybe PlayStation is not the place for me. I guess it really depends. Like, what was your takeaway from Jason Schreier's article?
I was just kind of like, I think he himself tweeted that like people will be talking about the games that were mentioned, but the real story is how it's affecting the developers and the humans, and the sort of the sense, the story about that one dev who felt like they were being integrated into Naughty Dog and losing their identity, and how the sort of the way the article's framed, talking about how the pursuit of blockbusters is trampling on studio culture and stuff like that. And Ben Studio's game director and lead writer left in December, if I remember right.
Yeah,
I remember
he did.
Right?
He did. The studio had, and I think the writer who had
Lead
been
writer.
like, yeah.
So they left in December, which ain't a good look, and probably the writing was already on the wall back then about whether Days Gone would get a sequel or not. I didn't play Days Gone because I barely used my PlayStation when I had one, and now I don't have one. But I always thought it looked like a pretty cool game, and it like when it came to fidelity, I was kind of jealous, and I was thinking like, man, I wish State of Decay had these kind of animations and this kind of gun control, gunplay, and stuff like that. So it didn't look too bad to me. People were kind of mean about its the issues that it had, but I believe like it was patched up and fixed up and whatever. But didn't they announce that's coming to PC, or did I imagine?
No,
that?
Days Gone's coming to PC.
So
sometime
I'm gonna
soon.
play it there. I'm gonna play Days Gone on PC when it drops. I might even review it. Shall I review it? I'll review it. But at the same time, it's kind of like this is the industry we're in right now, and if you want to make those big AAA blockbuster kind of games, there's only a finite amount of people who are skillful enough to make those kind of games. And I suppose like if Sony feels like they're spreading themselves too thin, consolidation to keep delivering those AAA experiences that have honestly become what PlayStation is known for in some ways, they're kind of painting themselves into a corner where they have to keep delivering on that, because ultimately that's PlayStation's unique selling point right now. They lost the power narrative to Xbox, arguably lost the value narrative to Xbox with Game Pass and the Xbox Series S. They lost the back compatibility narrative pretty damn hard, because it doesn't have any backwards compatibility with the 360 generation. And also we've got the whole sort of the weirdness surrounding upgrading a game from PS4 to PS5 version, The fact that they exist in two different SKUs is something Sony didn't anticipate. So if you play, and also it's much bigger console, so they've lost the elegance narrative potentially. But anyway, that's subjective. But the one thing for sure that PlayStation can boast, without a shadow of a doubt, as a unique selling point for people who aren't locked in for the next generation of gamers, is this sort of idea that they deliver constant quality games that are of a high caliber, received well by critics, and dominate headlines. And when you buy PlayStation, you're buying the cream of the crop sort of gaming experience. If they feel like they're not going to be able to deliver that with some of their studios, and they're going to end up with like a AA game, dun dun dun, the dreaded AA,
The dreaded AA game, yeah.
dreaded AA game. That's kind of like, it's almost sad in a way that they've sort of painted themselves into a position where they can't experiment. It's kind of, I really do wish and I do envy the quality of games that Sony is known for. But at the same time, it'd feel kind of sad to me that if it was at the cost of games like Grounded or Minecraft Dungeons and, even Battletoads, like Battletoads was like a game I will never play again. I quite liked the beat 'em up segments, but all the other segments were just tedious. Also, it had really great writing, actually. It's probably one of the funniest games I've ever played. In fact, I think the writing was probably the best part of the game. Like the comedy and the cartoons and stuff. If they made Battletoads like a Saturday morning cartoon on Netflix or something, I would watch that if it had the same writing team. But, it's those kind of quirky sort of experiences that I want as well as the AAA bangers. I don't want the weird sort of smaller games. It's kind of mean calling them weird, but the sort of the riskier projects, like the smaller the passion projects. Like, I appreciate that Bleeding Edge exists. I appreciate that Grounded exists. And I know this is a business at the end of the day, but the business is driven by creative people who have ideas and want to test those ideas. And studios like Double Fine and all the different teams that Microsoft has under its belt. I'd hate to think that like the devs would feel they can't go out and make a game because for whatever reason they couldn't convince an executive that it was worth even trying. But that's the reality of the industry. That's not unique to Sony by any means. And I'm sure it happens at Xbox all the time, where a dev pitches a game and then an exec vetoes it or whatever. But that's the picture that kind of Jason. That's the picture I got from reading the article. But we don't know for sure because, again, we don't have Sony's side of the story. We don't have the studio's side of the story. We don't have a complete picture of what happened from all sides. It's just one side of the story. So, it's another not great look for Sony in a couple of weeks that haven't been particularly great for Sony. But it's like I said on Twitter as well. When Sony starts showing off those games towards E3, no one's going to remember any of this stuff. It's going to be like, this is going to be the topic of the week, and it'll be forgotten if Sony keeps delivering that quality, because that's what it's known for, and that's what they're good at. So I don't think PlayStation fans have anything particularly daunting to worry about from all this. But just spare a thought for the devs and the fact that there are like humans behind the games.
They're humans making these games? Really?
Oh.
I thought they just came off an assembly line, So, we got like almost 1,700 people watching. Make sure if you're enjoying the show, guys, hit that like button. Just click on it. Super fast, super easy, and helps out the show. Yeah, my take, look, I'm a little like, The Last of Us remake news is just a little like, I don't know, it's a little weird to me. I don't really think it needs a remake. Days Gone 2 not happening is yeah, I would like to have seen a sequel because I think it would have been improved, and even that like other San Diego studio that everybody was saying was Uncharted, they're not making. So it's just, I guess it really depends on what side of the fence you're sitting on. Either like you think Sony has a huge problem, right? That like these studios are in trouble, and what is Sony thinking? You know, MLB The Show's on Xbox Game Pass, right? And then you combine that with this article about now we're not even getting Days Gone 2, and why are you remaking Last of Us? It just seems like this is overall like more negative news about PlayStation in a time where like everybody's cheerleading Xbox. Xbox got these articles coming out from people who are switching platforms because the Series X is, a better machine and has better quality of life improvements, and Game Pass is saving everybody money. So a lot of PlayStation fans are probably sitting here like, what is Jim Ryan thinking? What is Herman Hulse doing? Like, we had the formula figured out when Andrew House was there, when Sean Layden was there, when Gio Corsi was there, and Adam Boyes and John Drake, and now they're all gone. Like, could PlayStation really make this like big of a screw up? I mean, I kind of agree with you where I think what people want to see from Sony is those big titles, and once they see those big titles, most people will probably forget that there isn't going to be a Days Gone 2. And I also think a lot of these guys also they don't know what to do with an Xbox that isn't a joke. They don't know what to do with an Xbox that has the full support of Microsoft, because they're so used to PlayStation being on top and Xbox being the joke of everything that even if PlayStation wasn't doing well, Xbox was doing bad, so they can continue to make fun of it. But now you're in this situation where, Xbox is doing incredibly well, and all these things are kind of all happening at once, and PlayStation is being quiet. So now the go-tos of either praise PlayStation and bash Xbox, you can't really do that anymore. And a lot of these guys have built up entire profiles and YouTube channels and personas around that idea. So when they can't talk about how great PlayStation is or talk about how horrible Xbox is, they don't know what to say. And they just kind of sit there and they're just shocked because how could this happen to PlayStation, right? So I think it's a little bit of both. They're kind of worried about what PlayStation is doing, and they're worried that they can't make fun of Xbox, that Xbox is actually out here making moves and killing it and giving people what they want, and they're a little afraid, honestly. I think they're a little afraid about it. It's like one of their worst nightmares come true. They'll say, "Well, no, I want competition and all that stuff." No, what you wanted was a PlayStation that was dominant and an Xbox that you could continue to kick over and over and over again because that gets likes and retweets and video views, right? But the Xbox right now isn't the Xbox from 2013. This isn't Don Matrick, right? This isn't even Phil Spencer under Terry Myerson. This is Phil Spencer basically at the right hand of Satya Nadella and Amy Hood, who are basically saying, take what you need, invest it in studios and Game Pass, and make Xbox look like an attractive offer versus the competitors, and it's happening. And then when you contrast that with what's going on with PlayStation, with MLB and Jason Schreier's article, these guys just don't know how to process it right now. So does the article mean doom and gloom for PlayStation? No, not really. But what it means is that PlayStation is strictly focused on blockbusters to the detriment of maybe some of the employee culture and some of the people that really want to do creative things, that they're kind of shoehorned into of like, this needs to be the biggest thing ever. And if it's not, then we're not going to greenlight it and your studio might be shut down. That's kind of what I got from it. So I don't know if you want to add on anything, Jez, to that.
Nah, it's all Gucci.
No, it's all Gucci. It's all Gucci. All right.
That's what you guys say, right?
I don't think I've ever said that. So
you say it all the time.
I don't. When have I ever said it's all Gucci? I've literally never said that until right now when you made me say the word. Unless you mean you guys meaning Americans.
He say it all the time. Guys. He says it all the time off camera.
Yeah. Athiel, he says, I really don't understand why PlayStationers are making The Last of Us. Maybe they feel there's some synergy into releasing a Last of Us remake at the same time as an HBO show, and if the HBO show is really good, it could reach a cultural level like Game of Thrones, and it kind of also would impact the sales of the game. I don't understand. Maybe that's the reasoning behind it. I don't really think Last of Us needs to be remade, but Sony clearly feels differently. Whittia says Hellblade relies on mocap, so if the pandemic hit before Ninja Theory had a chance to start, a whole year could have been lost to lockdown. That's a good point. Funchito says seems like Valve is trying to bring Xbox Game Pass on Steam. Possible. Shout out to Dirt Griggity. Rand, you never have to talk trash to these fanboys because guys like me will talk ish for you, especially after being smacked around for 8 years. Wiley Coyote says Tyler McVeal saying Valve trying to get Xbox Game Pass on Steam. So who's Tyler McVeal? Someone put that in chat, because we have 2 super chats here talking about Valve trying to get Game Pass on Steam. And if that does happen, just remember, me and Jez have been literally talking about this for like a year. Because I've always thought to myself, man, I think it's pretty clear PC users don't want to use the Windows 10 store for Game Pass. Why couldn't Microsoft just put a creative version of Game Pass on Steam? Like, we already know they allow subscription services like EA Play. All you would have to do is remove any third parties, and it's just, you just have first party, and I think plenty of people on Steam would subscribe to it. I mean, Jez, you even saw the list, I think, of the sale going on right now and how like 10 of the top 20 selling games on Steam are Xbox first party titles, like the Halos and the Sea of Thieves. Like, I would imagine if you had Game Pass on there, a lot of those people, Steam is the biggest place for PC gaming, would subscribe. And I think PC is probably the biggest growth area for Game Pass. It's just that nobody really wants to use the Game Pass store or the Windows 10 store, unfortunately. But that's all Microsoft's doing. They're the ones who made it unattractive in the first place, right? So it's on them to fix it.
They need to fix it.
Beats Game Life says the last day to play with small games weird. Relish GT says, couldn't they set the console to USA and buy the games for $60? I mean, they could, but you need to actually get currency from here. A lot of people don't really want to screw around with that, and technically, that probably does violate in terms of the service. So a lot of people don't do it because they fear it might get them banned. But you could do it. You could set your region to somewhere else, buy the game, but you would need currency from that region. However, I wonder if Microsoft would consider that marketplace stuff. If you're circumventing your region's store to get a cheaper deal, they might. So think twice about doing that. I don't really recommend that whatsoever. Cody says, Sony's CEO changed a few years, which resulted in Sean Layden leaving and Jim Ryan getting complete control of PlayStation. Kaz made PlayStation what it is, and he's gone. Gerald Max says, PlayStation does not want Game Pass. They hate it. They would never rent games. Insert sarcasm. Mercy Bucket says, Sony is working on strictly blockbuster games. The issue is that they would need to deliver a lot of those if that's their goal at the expense of letting go of small developers that were under Sony umbrella. It's not good business. And Dan says, fanboys turn gaming into a cult religion. It's really weird seeing grown men defending corporations no matter what. It's really gross. Indeed it is. Indeed it is. I mean, you can be a fan of stuff. Nobody's saying you can't. A lot of people
call out the bad. Call out the bad when when you can be a fan of a football team and still admit when they suck, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's what we do. I mean, like, I like Xbox. I think everybody knows that. I would consider myself a fanboy of Xbox. I've never said I'm neutral, but I always call out Xbox when they need to be called out. I'm more critical of Xbox than I am any other company. I don't bend over backward for everything Xbox does and says, oh, it's okay. It's okay to double the price of Xbox Live Gold, right? Like, no, that's not flying with me. They make mistakes. I'll be the one, to call them out. I'm a little bit more, and I like PlayStation, I like the games they make, but I really don't talk about them too much, and I don't really criticize them because, quite honestly, I don't really care as much. I care about Xbox and how they're doing. and I want to see them succeed. And I feel like sometimes they make mistakes, and that needs to be pointed out. So I'll always point that out. So it's just there's just this group of people, you know, on social media who ride or die for one platform and will only positively talk about what they think, no matter if it's a bad move, and whatever the other console's doing is the absolute worst. And those are the absolute worst of the worst. You know who those people are. So I'm trying to look to see if anybody said anything about this Tyler guy that said Valve wants Game Pass on Steam, but I haven't seen anybody say anything in chat.
Speaking of remakes, Rand, Mass Effect Legendary Edition has gone gold.
I did see
more
that, yeah.
delayed.
That is, how many people in here are going to replay the Mass Effect Legendary Edition? And how many people also believe, like me, that Mass Effect 2 is the best game in the trilogy? No? Anybody? Mass Effect 2, the best game in the trilogy? I think so. By far. So let's see here. What else we got here? Deathloop got delayed, which I saw some spicy takes online about Deathloop getting delayed. I don't know. I think I shared one with you, Jez, that basically Microsoft delayed them because Sony was going to have too much momentum and they had to delay the game to later. I don't understand why people would think that. Like, Microsoft wants Deathloop to come out as soon as possible on the PlayStation, because as soon as it comes out, it can come out earlier on Xbox. Like, there's a year exclusivity. So Microsoft would much rather have the game release earlier so it can hit Xbox Game Pass, at a quicker pace than not. Like, you keep in mind, Deathloop was supposed to be a launch title for the PS5. I'm sure Microsoft would have loved that because they could have put Deathloop in Game Pass this year, at the end of the year. But instead, it got delayed to May. So now you're looking at May 2022 at, the earliest it could come. Now it's September. So the earliest it could come to Xbox is September of next year. So it's just, the game needs work. People are in a pandemic. It's just, the game's not ready. The game's going to ship whenever it's finished. And the idea that Microsoft intentionally delayed it because PlayStation's having this momentum is just a ridiculous concept. Because they want that game out so they can put it on Game Pass ASAP.
There's literally no benefit to Microsoft doing that. No benefit.
Yeah.
Rand, I need to send you a link. I'll retweet this on my Twitter.
Wiley Coyote says Tyler McVicker said in a video it was in a Q&A. Okay.
All right.
So what do you got here, Jez?
Treyarch of Call of Duty fame just shared a nice video of motion capture of a cat.
I see it, yeah. Motion capture of a cat. So are we going to get a cat in the newest Call of Duty? This year's Call of Duty?
Cat of Duty.
Cat of Duty. Well, they're not actually up this year. I think it's Sledgehammer. Yeah, interesting.
Maybe it's a zombie cat then.
Maybe.
What
else?
No, Treyarch makes the zombies, right? Or do they all just make zombies now? I don't know.
Hey, you guys want to play Forza Motorsport right now? It sounds like you can, Jez.
Yeah, through the Insider program, right? Or something.
Yeah, Turn 10 talked about how they're playtesting the game now, and they want to get the community involved, so I guess you have to sign up. So, I mean, that definitely kind of speaks to the game not coming out this year, just like we thought. More maybe of a 2022 release.
Yeah, maybe.
Is anybody signing up to test out and play test and help Turn 10 build this Forza Motorsport? Let us know in the chat. Yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about here, Jez? We could talk about PlayStation. Oh, yeah, okay. So, according to David Jaffe, PlayStation is indeed working on a Game Pass competitor. I think you've mentioned this a few times. You expect, and me and you have both agreed on this, that we expect at some point PlayStation to copy Game Pass 1-to-1. Like, basically just copy it. Now, David Jaffe, he used to work at Sony, creator of God of War, Twisted Metal. He says he has contacts there. And, he basically says he knows for sure that Sony is working on some sort of Game Pass competitor. And when you look at what Game Pass could, what they could offer, they could offer their own games, third-party games. They do have an anime service, like, which one? Funimation. They do have their own movies. So maybe...
Don't pretend you don't know. I know this weekend you're going to be rocking Attack on Titan.
Yeah. Totally. But could that be what Sony's play is, where they bundle in everything that the company as a whole does? Like, hey, for this low price, not only do you get our first party games, because the copy Game Pass, they're gonna have to put their own games day one in the service. But you get our games, you get third party games, you get anime, and you get movies. But then Sony just made a deal with Netflix to put their movies on Netflix for a bit. So
that's kind of, but maybe it's kind of like, marketing their own service through Netflix. It's like, well, I can get these movies on Netflix, but I could also get them on PlayStation with also the games and anime, So, and Sony was also trying to buy Crunchyroll, which is the other big anime provision service. But the Japanese regulator has halted the sale, citing competition concerns. Because that will give Sony control of the whole streaming market for anime. Supposedly. So maybe Sony won't get Crunchyroll. I don't think Microsoft will buy Crunchyroll.
No.
If that deal doesn't happen for whatever reason, don't expect Microsoft to go and buy Crunchyroll. But that is an interesting concept. Sony trying to build up a service that does a bit more than just the games. That's playing to their strengths. Microsoft's got like the backwards compatibility stuff and the cloud stuff going in there. Sony has PlayStation Now, but it's, unless they partner up fully with Azure, it's probably not going to be the same caliber of service. But I don't know. But I do believe that they will copy Game Pass one day, and we'll see Sony games released day and date straight into their service. I do believe that.
I don't think it'll be with any of the stuff that it's announced right now, and that's one of the reasons why I think Microsoft is being so aggressive, right? With the MLB deal, with Outriders, with this potential Battlefield deal or whatever, getting Game Pass on maybe the PC or getting Game Pass on the Switch, because they want a significant lead before a competitor really enters the market. Like if Sony starts this, because look, PlayStation Now, nobody's really subscribed, and I mean nobody, but last time Sony reported on PlayStation Now numbers, it was 2 million subscribers, right? Sony doesn't talk about things that aren't successful. They never mention Days Gone 2 numbers, and what do you know? They never mention Days Gone sales whatsoever. And what do you know? Days Gone 2 isn't happening. They never mentioned Death Stranding sales. And what do you know? Kojima might be working with Xbox on an exclusive. If something underperforms to Sony's expectations, Sony just pretends like it doesn't exist. So we know they care about their bigger titles, because they all God of War sold this, and Last of Us did this, and PS Plus is doing this, because they always mention it. But what they don't mention is also important. So I do wonder how they fix PlayStation Now, if that's the competitor, because they just got Avengers and Borderlands 3, but Avengers is only in there for 3 months, and it's just the PS4 versions. It's not even the PS5 versions. So I don't really think that's going to get people to subscribe. What they're going to have to do is they're going to have to leverage their first-party titles. Everybody, or not everybody, but God of War Ragnarok is going to sell 20 million, and they probably won't put that in a subscription, but there are a lot of people that want those games that will probably subscribe to a PlayStation subscription service to play those games. And then if you, kind of bundle everything else in there, it could take off. But that's why Xbox is out there being aggressive, because I think they know that, and they want to have a significant lead, whether it's 30 million or 40 million, before Sony really kind of lumbers out and pivots and puts out their own competitor. So Yeah, the wars for content, the wars for exclusives, the wars for time deal, like it's all just going to get more and more. Like Xbox is going to be out here pursuing deals for day one Game Pass, and PlayStation is going to be out here pursuing deals to get timed exclusives. So, which one's a better strategy? Which ones do you like, chat? Do you like Sony's way of basically giving money to somebody and being like, this game is only with us for a year? Or do you like Xbox's strategy of being like, we'll give you money and this game is free for our users? Which one? I'm interested because this one's pretty interesting. Like, which one speaks more, like volumes more to people? Like playing a game for cheap, or the only place to play a game is on your platform. That's essentially the deals that everybody's kind of making these days. So, let's see. We got some other super chats I wanted to get through. Let's see here. Wily Coyote says it was on his Valve and id question and answer with Tile letting off Steam video on YouTube that he streamed on March 30th. It's at the 31-minute 8-second mark. Achievement says PS Now doesn't have PS5 versions of the game. Sad. And Tony Art says watch Sony remaster the PS5 remake of a PS4 remaster of a PS3 game for the PS6 console when it comes out. Man, that's a mouthful. It's kind of funny though. Yeah. So, Jez, do you have anything else you want to say, or you want to take some questions a little bit?
Let's take some questions, bro.
Yeah, so thank you guys for everybody tuning in to the Xbox 2 podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe if it's your first time here. But yeah, we'll take some questions from people. Just put it in the chat at me or Jez so we can see them, and we'll do our best to answer it. Man, I can't wait to finish off Outriders, because like I thought the nerf was going to come next week, but they already nerfed it, so it's like. I really was enjoying my temporal rounds build, because like I had like a skill that was like, I activate my movement skill and get 50% extra weapon damage. I activate my deception skill, I get another 50% extra damage. And then the temporal rounds does extra damage on top of it. So I would teleport behind somebody and drop my bubble, and I would just wreck enemies. They just literally explode because I was doing so much damage. And now they nerfed it from 50 to 35%, so I only get 70% instead of the full, everything. Aaron says, have Mr. Matty and ACG on your show. That'd be cool. The Defining Duke meets the Xbox 2 with Mr. Matty Plays and Carrick from ACG on the show. That'd be pretty awesome. Humdrung says, hey, Rand, thoughts on Sean Layden liking tweets that bash Jim Ryan and current Sony? Do you know what happened? Has Sean Layden been liking tweets?
Yeah,
bashing?
if you go on Sean Layden's Twitter and look at his likes, he's liked a load of tweets that are just like, against Jim Ryan, bring Sean Layden back, stuff like that. There's some bad blood.
Oh yeah, there's bad blood. I don't know the particulars, but I did hear there was a very big power struggle within PlayStation. And we know who won, because he runs PlayStation now, and that's Jim Ryan. And we know who lost, because he doesn't work there anymore, and he basically doesn't talk on social media, and that's Sean Layden. So I think that would make a very interesting Jason Schreier article one day, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would.
What happened between Sean Layden and Jim Ryan? So I would love to know as well. I would love to know, but maybe we never will. I'm kind of surprised that Sean Layden's actually liking tweets. That does kind of seem out of character for him, from what I know a little bit about him. But maybe he feels a certain way. Maybe he feels he got shoved out the door, and I don't know. Maybe the PlayStation fans are just like, oh man, we had it so good with Sean Layden and Andrew House and all these dudes, and now we got lying Jim Ryan, tap dancing Jim Ryan, right? We got the Don Matrick version of Don Matrick of a PlayStation, Jim Ryan. So the guy that said, hey, who'd want to play these old games? They look awful. The guy that said, hey, crossplay. We need to protect the children on Minecraft and all these things. Hey, we believe in generations, which, to be fair, not really on him. It's on everybody else for thinking they weren't going to do cross-gen. But he was definitely leading people down that avenue, right? So I think a lot of PlayStation fans don't particularly care for Jim Ryan. So it is what it is. Let's see
Around good news.
Yes.
New Fear Factory album's just been announced.
Ooh, new Fear Factory. All right. MJ says, "Hey Rand, is Battlefield 6 going to Game Pass? True. That's huge. If so, I mean, I think it's highly likely. I'm not going to say it's 100% true because things can change, but I would not be shocked. After MLB The Show, I think anything's possible. I think any game you put out there, maybe except for the exception of Call of Duty, sure, why not? If Microsoft is willing to drop the money, and with how successful Outriders seems to have been on Xbox, I think a lot of these publishers are looking like, yo, we need that. Like Battlefield 6 is going to have tons of microtransactions, and like they would probably love if they could get not only a huge check from Microsoft, but then having 30 million people playing their game and having Battlefield 6 like number 2 or number 3 on Xbox next to Call of Duty and raising the profile of the game on other platforms because everybody's talking about, like, EA would love that. So I think it's possible you see that, and maybe even Madden and FIFA. We'll just have to wait and see. Leal says, "Hey, Benji Sales said we'll see Compulsion's new IP at E3. Do you think it will blow us away?" I hope so.
I have no idea. That studio's shrouded in secrecy. They're pretty small, and I think they're still fairly small. So I wouldn't expect like a big AAA sort of tentpole game. But who knows? Maybe they'll prove us all wrong. The games I was teasing are not Compulsion's game. I have no idea what Compulsion's game is, so
Yeah.
I'm as intrigued as everyone else.
That's true. X the Gamer says, "Have you experienced any issues where you lose connection to Xbox Live for a few seconds, then reconnect?" Sometimes, but I think that's mostly to do with my router, or used to do it, because I got a new modem and I don't have that problem anymore. But I think that has to do more with like your modem and your router than it is with Xbox Live. But I've had that happen, yeah. Nico says, wouldn't it be interesting to have all Nintendo exclusives on Xbox in exchange for Xbox exclusives on Switch? That would be, but I don't think that's ever going to happen. I know
Never gonna happen.
I know a lot of Xbox fans being like, "Well, we give our exclusives to them and we don't get anything in return." But Microsoft looks at the Switch in a way where it's like they want Game Pass to a new audience.
It becomes an Xbox handheld.
Yeah, essentially.
The Switch is a companion device to your Series X or your gaming PC. It's like, for a certain player, it's not necessarily your main gaming device. Like, I don't see it that way. I see it as a companion device. I see it like, it's a handheld companion. Like, if you're thinking about it in that way, Android also has all the Xbox exclusives through the cloud right now. It's no different, really. It's just another screen with Wi-Fi. That's all it is to Microsoft.
And the cool thing is, it's like, if Game Pass did come to the Switch with xCloud, you could basically use it as a handheld, and the money that Microsoft would be making on the subscriptions would just be invested back into Xbox for more services and potentially more acquisitions, because then they have a bigger audience of people they need to make games for. So it only actually helps Xbox in that sense. But yeah, we won't see Mario on Xbox or Zelda unless Microsoft bought Nintendo, but they tried and they were laughed out of the room, so not going to happen. Adam says, "Hey Jez, was Deathloop delayed because of Microsoft money, and will Ghostwire Tokyo be delayed as well? Do you think their time deals will be shortened?"
No.
Microsoft,
they were delayed because they weren't ready, and COVID. Microsoft hasn't artificially delayed those games.
Yeah.
I mean, why would they? They're gonna get a cut of that money too, right?
70%.
If they extend, if they delay the game, that's just more dev time and more wages you got to pay before the dev starts making the money back. So no, they haven't officially delayed it. There's literally no reason for them to do that. It serves no business purpose whatsoever to do that. So no, that conspiracy theory is silly.
Yeah. Minute Repeater says, Jez, do you know if Microsoft has made deals with South Korean developers?
I have no idea about that, I'm afraid, but I do know that Microsoft is eyeing Asia as, you know, a growth opportunity. South Korea, Japan, and India are big areas of focus for Microsoft. So I would not be surprised if they are. I mean, we are getting Crossfire, which is popular in South Korea, I believe. So that could be the start of more. I'm not honestly not that familiar with the South Korean games market. But you know, it's a big economy. It's one of the world's biggest economies, Korea. So I suspect Microsoft would like a piece of that. And you know, we'll wait and see.
Lydia says, apart from looks, any reasons you don't use webcams for the podcast? I actually don't own a webcam right now, and my background and situation here wouldn't be a good look for like a webcam. And honestly, like I just like getting on here and talking, and like I'm not saying me and Jez won't do webcam podcasts in the future. That's always a possibility. But for right now, for me, it's pretty much a zero. It's all about kind of where I'm at and how everything looks. And I honestly don't even own a webcam, so I couldn't even do it even if I wanted to. Now I could buy one, yes, and that wouldn't be an issue. But I would only get one if I'm serious about it. And if I was going to be on webcam for the podcast, I would probably start appearing in my videos as well. So it's all depends on how I feel about it.
There could be VTubers, man.
VTubers,
VTubers.
Yeah.
Do that.
Stodgy Caesar says, how many games are Remedy making? Well, they're making the single player of Crossfire X. Jeff Grubb says they're making Alan Wake 2. We know they're making some multiplayer game called Vanguard, and then there's that rumor that they're working on a PlayStation exclusive. So, sounds like quite a bit. Let's see. Sappho says, are you guys watching The Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Not yet. I usually watch... I don't watch shows week by week. I wait to binge them. So, I'll watch that show when the last episode comes on. Beats Games and Life says, will third-party publishers be willing to put their games in a subscription service on PlayStation when PS gives them the majority of their console sales? At the end of the day, it comes down to money. That's what it comes down to. Like, if the check is big enough and the return is is worth it, then these publishers will put their games on Game Pass or PlayStation. Money talks. But on the other side of it, if they think putting the game on a subscription service benefits them, then they'll definitely really consider it. Sin Vendetta says, Jez, is there any plans for Microsoft to bring the Xbox Movies and TV app out as a standalone app on things like TVs and Rokus to access your movies and TV shows everywhere you go?
No. Unfortunately not. The reason for that is they'd have to pay additional licenses for all the movies and TV shows on there. Which they don't want to do because it's not a very big business and they don't think it's very lucrative. There was at one point a team in the UK who were making an Android and iOS app for Microsoft Movies and TV, but they were shut down. So at some point when Microsoft decided it wasn't going to do Groove anymore, it also decided it wasn't going to push any harder into movies and TV anymore. And now we're in a situation where, Microsoft still acquires the rights to movies and TV on Xbox because there is a lot of people who rent movies on Xbox, just to watch on their TVs. But if you want a platform where you can buy the movie and then watch it across all your devices, that's never going to be Xbox, I don't think. They would have done it years ago if they were going to do it, and it's just not happened. So if you do want that, Google Play is a good option. or iTunes if you're on Apple or the App Store,
Isn't the-
wherever it's called.
What about like the movies and anywhere stuff like Disney does, right? Or is that somebody else?
Yeah. I mean, Microsoft has the Movies Anywhere thing. Like, if you're in America specifically, it's always America. You can link, yeah. You can download an app called Movies Anywhere, and you can link your Microsoft account to that app, and it will let you watch movies and TV shows that you own on Xbox on your mobile phone. But it's only available in America. So if you're in Europe, you don't get that, sadly. So, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But, there is supposedly going to be a new Windows 10 operating system that's more tablet oriented coming out this year called Windows 10X that runs UWP. So maybe there'll be like an alternative way of getting it, and Microsoft can just say, "Oh, we don't need to buy a new license because this is a PC," and really it's like a little tablet. Because man, I used to watch movies and TV on my Windows Phone back in the day. Rand, I miss Windows Phone.
I know you
I don't know
do.
if I've ever mentioned it.
No, you've
I don't
never,
know if
you've
No.
never mentioned it before.
Never mentioned it. No, well, I do. I miss Windows Phone. I miss it a lot.
Did you see this article? People keep on tagging me in it. It says Assassin's Creed maker Ubisoft could be on its mergers and acquisitions last life. Right. So,
Yeah, that's it's an opinion piece. I had a quick glance at it. It's an opinion piece from Reuters, and they're saying that Ubisoft's business is not looking that healthy. The
pandemic.
games like
Didn't they say the pandemic really decreased value of its games or something like that?
yeah,
Or-
something like that. Ubisoft has like a huge amount of personnel, so they have like massive overheads, and I think like kind of like 343, their studios like aren't as nimble, and they weren't able to maybe pivot or adapt to work from home as fast as some of the other studios were. And also they make really huge, complicated games, which become exponentially more complicated when you factor in the fact that you have to download builds over your domestic internet connection and stuff like that. So their overheads probably increased a huge amount during the pandemic, more so than most publishers probably. And you have to remember, Microsoft's a cloud company, so they're already kind of set up for this in some ways, whereas Ubisoft isn't. So like they have to like buy in all these services. They have to pay Microsoft for Office 365 or whatever. So having to work from home will have increased their overheads, which decreased the value of their games, because now they're getting less bang for their buck when they're selling them and stuff like that. So, and also the family that owns Ubisoft has sold a lot of the company over the years. They still own 20% of it. The Guillermo family. I probably pronounced that wrong. But they own 20% of it. Tencent own 5% of it. And then a bunch of banks and other companies own other pieces of it. So like they still have enough chunk of the company to fight off a hostile takeover, but at the same time maybe they're just kind of thinking, you know what, let's just get out now while we got the opportunity to do so, and just live the high life.
I wonder if that's
with our billions.
one of the reasons why we're hearing about the Ubisoft games in Game Pass, right? Maybe they need the influx of
maybe.
cash.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it would help them, but for my I know people are gonna ask about this. I've already gotten mentions about it, like as it pertains to Microsoft's acquiring stuff. Microsoft would have to spend a hell of a lot of money to get Ubisoft, because not only do they have to buy all the shares, but they also have to offer a premium to entice the shareholders. So the shareholders will be like, yeah, we'll give you our shares, but we want this much extra. How much is it worth to you? There'll be a bidding war essentially for Ubisoft's bones if it does sell. And and all I'm sure Reuters article is probably going to watch Ubisoft share price tomorrow. Ubisoft share price is probably going to go up tomorrow, because everyone's going to be wanting to get in on that acquisition. That rumors like this always like spike share prices. And there was rumors about Take-Two selling in January, which spiked Take-Two shares for a little while, and then they're readjusted after a few months after speculators get bored and stuff like that. But stock market is a fickle thing, but yeah, it could happen. Ubisoft's like probably one of the studios that's been hit hardest by the pandemic, and I don't know. We'll have to see if they can turn it around. And don't forget, they also had that massive scandal last year or the year before, where they
That
had
is
to like
true.
fire. They fired a lot of managers, which probably did not help. With company culture, and they restructured some things, and that comes with a cost attached to it, right? Basically, to upend your corporate culture based on the abuse scandal that a lot of Ubisoft execs and staff that I used to follow got fired for accusations against them. So it's been a tough couple of years for Ubisoft, I would say, to say the least.
Yeah.
But, maybe they'll pull through and it'll be fine.
We'll see. I've always said it, if Xbox did buy Ubisoft, that's it. They could rest easy. They'd have everything essentially you would need, but that's a lot of employees to
I
take
would rather
on.
I would rather they had Capcom any day of the week.
Yeah, I know you love Capcom and Monster Hunter, but
I don't.
go
all
ahead.
of you games are the same.
I mean, I like Capcom. Capcom makes great games. I'm just saying, Ubisoft comes with a lot of developers and a lot of big time IP as well.
A lot of overhead.
Yeah, and a lot of overhead. But maybe it's just better for them to get the games on Game Pass than owning it. But we'll see. We'll see.
Tencent gets Ubisoft.
Oh, jeez. Sin Vendetta says that's unfortunate because you can use Connect through Movies Anywhere, but the problem with that app is that certain publishers like MGM, Paramount, and Lionsgate don't support it. Dovikin says, are we having an event this month? Well, actually, yeah. So there's an Age of Empires event tomorrow on the 10th. There's also what Jez leaked about GameStack Live on the 21st. So we might get a release date for Age of Empires tomorrow, maybe.
I think so.
Jez thinks so. And the GameStack Live thing really isn't for people like us. So, Cookie says, is it possible for Xbox to have something similar to PlayStation's SharePlay feature? Example, screen sharing and party chat. I mean, it's always possible, but I think Xbox is doing different stuff, personally. Achievement says, can Sony afford a Game Pass competitor at scale? Well, that's the big question. One of the reasons Microsoft can do it is because they own the back end, right? They own Azure and stuff like that. And they also have the backing of $1 trillion corporation that is willing to fund this stuff, even though, and maybe you want to speak on this, but you tweeted out the other day that don't fall for people saying that Game Pass is losing money, catastrophic amounts of money and all this stuff, and that it's not sustainable because for sure that Game Pass is.
I see that narrative all the time, but literally just do the math. Phil said that in an interview before. I'm sure he has. Just do the math. You can even do it conservatively. Take a conservative estimate, based on January's figures, 18 million, and multiply that by 10, which is like the lower tier of Game Pass. That's a lot of money every month for nothing. So they have like that much money, $180 million every month to splash around. And there's no overhead, basically. They don't have to pay anyone for cloud. And, there's the staff they have to pay, I guess. But the majority of that money goes on acquiring content. And now we have to assume that, a lot of people are on Game Pass Ultimate, and there's probably even more than 18 million subscribers now. So it's probably upwards of 200 million a month, maybe even more, that they're getting for Game Pass. That's a lot of money, So the whole narrative that Game Pass is a black hole is sort of outdated thinking, and it's based on outdated knowledge of the gaming industry. It's based on this idea that games are retail copies and that's it. It's based on the idea that there's no upsell. It's based on the idea there's no DLC. It's based on the idea that the margins are worse because back in the 360 era, you used to have to pay Microsoft 20 grand to patch your game.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that anymore, the whole industry is completely different, and we live in a world where a game that's literally free can make billions of dollars every month. Your Genshin Impact, your Pokemon Go, your League of Legends, whatever.
Your Fortnites. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a completely different industry.
Yep. Icyler says if Mr. Jess had no choice, would he work for Tencent or Google?
Oh my god, that is a horrible question.
It is a horrible question.
That's sadistic. It'd have to be Google. It would have to be Google, which is awful. But at least Google's based in a democracy.
Yeah,
that way.
That is true. Question mark says got today an invitation for Xbox Fan Fest talks for April 15th. Any news on that? And do you have a live reaction for Age of Empires tomorrow? Say yes. Unfortunately, no. I don't really care about Age of Empires, and I'm pretty sure that game is only on PC, so I'm not interested. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the next podcast. But yeah, I did get the email about FanFest. They do have some sort of talks, and I know they had people that could talk to, like, I think it was Major Nelson and Phil last time, so I'm sure maybe it's more of that stuff. But yeah, Chinook Guy says GameStack event will be the first time Velocity architecture is shown. Is this true, Jez?
Haven't they shown it already?
I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of.
I don't know. They're going to demonstrate Xbox Velocity architecture, but they're also going to demonstrate something called Direct Storage, which brings Xbox Velocity architecture features to Windows 10.
Yeah.
So, like, a lot of the APIs which benefit things like, streaming of data and decompression and all those sort of things. Developers on PC making games for the Windows 10 stack, they will be able to leverage Xbox Velocity architecture technology as well in those games with the same code base. So, it's gonna be an exciting event to have a glimpse at what the future of tech looks like for Xbox. I don't know if the launch date's been announced yet, but it's April 21st of that show. But stay tuned.
Yeah, you did leak that. Aaron says, Jez, that's why I want them on your show. Maddie and ACG would like to learn about the Game Pass financials and those points of view. Well, maybe we can make that happen one day. We could have like a Defining Duke crossover or like a Gamertag Radio crossover, have more people on. But we'll have to see how all that goes in the future. So Alexander says, hey, do you guys already talk about the Mighty Doom, the mobile game? Did you see this, Jez? The game that Alpha Dog is making?
Yeah, Alpha Dog. So Microsoft's bona fide mobile game dev is making a top-down shooter based on Doom. Looks interesting. I think you play it with one hand, which is useful in certain situations. I guess. I was thinking of riding on the bus, but then I thought, what other things do you do with one hand?
Speaking of mobile, did you see? Did you see the job listing for head of mobile at PlayStation Studios that they put out today?
I did not.
Yeah, so it says, the job listing says, do you want to lead the development and strategy of mobile gaming and help shape the future of gaming for a world-class studio? As head of mobile, you will own and develop the mobile game strategy for PlayStation Studios and help build a foundation for future growth opportunities. You will lead all aspects of the expansion of our game development from consoles and PCs to mobile and live services with a focus on successfully adapting PlayStation's most popular franchises for mobile. You will be responsible for building and scaling a team of mobile leaders and will serve as the head of this new business unit within PlayStation Studios. So that was the other bit of news that kind of hit today.
Mobile is it's such a huge money-making piece of the gaming pie. We never talk about the games industry in the context of mobile because none of us really care about mobile games, but it's so much money. It's an absurd amount of money. You can't even imagine it. It's because there's literally billions and billions of users. Literally everyone has a phone in their pocket all the time, and there's no barrier to access. You don't need a TV, you don't need a sofa, you don't need to buy a console. Your phone's right there in your pocket. So the barriers to access is so minuscule compared to core gaming. And one of the reasons Microsoft even wants to do the cloud is because you put an Xbox in someone's pocket, they're more likely to play it. You got to eliminate those barriers. So, but at the same time, the mobile gaming industry seems to be really hard. Like Microsoft has failed repeatedly to crack the mobile industry. That Gears Pop thing, which was total fail, and then Minecraft Earth, which was a spectacular failure, and a bunch of other games that just like didn't fail, didn't do well. But they do have some success stories because they own Fallout Shelter now, which is one of the biggest games on mobile still. They also own Minecraft. Minecraft Pocket Edition is also one of the biggest games on mobile. It's one of the top selling games on the iOS App Store constantly, forever. And also that's got loads of DLC packs in it too. And then you've also got like Solitaire, Microsoft Solitaire, which is one of the biggest games on mobile as well. Although I'm not sure how like lucrative the business model is there. I think it's ad based Solitaire. It's got like ads on it. But anyway, Sony, like Microsoft, wants to crack a piece of that, and it's almost weird that even Nintendo has sort of spotty success in mobile. Like you'd think that the big gaming companies would have an easier time cracking mobile, right? But like for whatever reason, they can't seem to do it. Like Blizzard in their investor calls has said that they've got a lot of devs and teams working on mobile games right now. You've got the whole Diablo Immortal thing. Blizzard's working on, and also Hearthstone's ticking over, and so it makes sense that Sony would pursue that. But at the same time, it's not easy. We've seen it from Microsoft, so I don't know. So, I personally hope, Rand, that they put Xbox achievements into Fallout Shelter. I think that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. So basically, Sony's going to start putting most of their successful franchises as mobile titles. So God of War mobile, Last of Us mobile incoming. I'm sure these
they could do like the PlayStation 1 versions of those games and port them to mobile.
Maybe.
Like Final Fantasy 7 got ported to mobile, and you could play like the original God of War, maybe with simplified controls, hack and slash.
I'm sure this wasn't the announcements that the PlayStation fans wanted. From the combination of Jason Schreier's article to them hiring for head of mobile is not what those guys wanted to hear.
I want to hear that. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, you do, but I don't think they do. Gunstar says, question, is Forza Horizon 5 set in Japan? All that neon. As far as I know, it is not set in Japan.
I don't think it is.
Humdrug says, any Japanese creator you would like Xbox to partner with besides Kojima? Platinum with Kamiya again, not Scalebound. Personally, I mean, they already have Tango. So, Mikami, I've always enjoyed his stuff. Kojima is a big one. I can't really even think of some other ones off the top of my head. Jez, did you see that rumor we were tagged in about Scalebound coming back and being in development at Ninja Theory or whatever?
I did see that, but I don't believe it.
Yeah. Nico says, what do you think about the continuation of Doom? Do you think they will do some prequels like episode 1 to 3 in Star Wars in which you could see how things came to be? I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to go in a different direction, shelve Doom for a bit, maybe try to bring back Quake or something else.
They could do because the new Doom has all this extra lore and this history and this like ancient order of like Templar knights and stuff. They could do like a medieval Doom. That'd be rad. You're fighting with like spears and crossbows and stuff. I'm hyped about that. Make that game, id.
Make that game. Let's see here. Trying to see if there's any more questions. I need to scroll up on here. Yeah, I think that's it. So, thank you guys for watching the show this week. Me and Jez both appreciate all the support. And if you enjoyed it, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe if you're new or haven't already, and hit that notification bell. So you're always notified whenever this podcast goes live. You can always follow me and Jez on Twitter. We'll definitely tweet about the show and anything else. I would recommend following Jez so you get some nice juicy teases about stuff. Because he likes to tease.
I do.
You do like to tease. Yeah, yeah, so we'll be back next week, hopefully on a Friday, and with more stuff to talk about. And until then, keep it gaming, guys.